Chapter 1359. Pill of Fortune. If Yizichin had a mirror in front of him and saw his current expression, he'd definitely throw up all the food he'd eaten the night before. He pursed his lips, grabbed Xianji's arm, and shook it back and forth. He wasn't mistaken. He was acting spoiled in front of Xianji. The surrounding cultivators froze. Pu Jingwan's eyes went wide, and she looked back and forth at Yizichin as if she'd seen a ghost. Ugh! Perhaps because she'd been disgusted by Yizichin's coquetry, Pu Jingwan turned her head away and pretended to vomit. Yizichin was a half-step diviner expert, so he was quite sensitive to sound. He naturally heard Pu Jingwan's act, but all he did was tilt his head and glare at her. When he looked at Xianji, his smile was still as childish as ever. His eyes were filled with little stars, and he couldn't help but shake Xianji's arm. "Auntie!" Yizichin didn't say anything else. He simply looked at her coquettishly. Just by looking at his expression, Xianji knew that he was begging her to help him suppress the current situation. "You always know how to make trouble for me." She glared at Yizichin, then shook his hand off. Yizichin simply laughed. Yizichin just chuckled. He knew that since Xianji was rebuking him like that, it meant she'd help him. She sighed at Yizichin, then turned around and called over the captain of the guards who'd stopped Yizichin and the others. "Lady Providence." No matter what the guard captain saw, Xianji was the profound pavilion's head. In the face of such an existence, he had to lower himself to the extreme. Furthermore, since Xianji had called him over, he could more or less guess what she wanted to tell him. Xianji set the Wang family ancestor, who'd been beaten beyond recognition by Pu Jingwan, on the ground. Then she took out a jade bottle. "This is a pill of fortune." When they heard that, the onlookers couldn't help but gasp. Even Yizichin's gaze lit up. A pill of fortune. A divine-grade medicinal pill. As long as a strand of soul remained in the body of a dying person, it would be able to bring them back to life. It could be considered as a peerless pill for recovering injuries. Not only that, after consuming this pill, there was a chance of obtaining good fortune from heaven and earth, and a seed that would allow one to break through to the sovereign realm. In order to become a hegemon, luck, talent, and luck were all necessary. There were over 100 billion cultivators in the 9 divine mountains of the god race, and perhaps tens of millions of diviners. However, there were less than 1,000 who could truly become rulers. From this, it could be seen just how minuscule the chances of becoming a ruler were. Countless talented experts were stuck at the peak of the Deva realm, unable to take even half a step forward. This was like a natural chasm, and it was extremely difficult to cross this barrier. However, the origin pill could leave behind a seed that could allow the user to become a ruler. Of course, it wasn't a guarantee that the user would be able to break through, but at the very least, the chances of becoming a ruler were higher than normal cultivation. Yizichin couldn't help but gulp when he saw the bottle. Not even the pill refiners of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda's second floor could refine such a pill. In order to refine this pill, one must be a peak divine-grade alchemist. This pill had always been priceless. Even the Skyspan Trading Company hadn't auctioned off a single one in tens of thousands of years, and its circulation was limited to the most powerful cultivators of the god race. However, one had to be on the brink of death or be gravely injured to consume it. Otherwise, it could only heal injuries, but there was no way to obtain good fortune. Was she going to use this pill to calm things down? The guard captain's eyes burned with passion. He stared at the pill in Xianji's hands in a daze, his heart pounding madly. After all, after becoming a diviner, one's temperament would undergo massive changes. Very few things could disturb one's state of mind. But this was a pill of fortune. It wasn't as simple as a pill, it was a stepping stone to becoming a ruler. If one could take advantage of the pill of fortune and seize this opportunity, they could become a ruler who looked down on billions of lives. It wasn't just him. Anyone who hadn't become a ruler yet would react the same way when they saw the pill. Who knew their emotions might be even more intense than his? He licked his lips and stared at the pill in Xianji's hands, his eyes burning with passion. Could it be? There are 13 pills of fortune in here. Give one to Wang Chun and the other to him. Treat it as a gift for his clansmen. My request is that you don't make trouble for my nephew in the future. As for the other pills, each of you guards can take one. Whether or not you can steal the good fortune inside will depend on your luck. What I want you to do. We definitely won't take this matter to heart, said the guard captain. Not only will we not take it to heart, but I also don't want this matter to reach the God Emperor's ears. The God Emperor has been very tired lately and doesn't have the energy to worry about these things. Do you understand? This. The guard captain looked around at the people on the street. If it were just Xianji and the others, he could naturally ensure that this matter wouldn't reach the God Emperor's ears. But there were so many people here, and so many mouths were everywhere, he didn't dare make such a promise. That's your problem. The pills of fortune are right here. Whether you want them or not, it's up to you. Xianji smiled calmly. No matter what, he couldn't give up on the pills of fortune. The guard captain was keenly aware that his talent was limited. Reaching the 3rd stage of the diviner realm was probably his limit. But if he could get his hands on the pills of fortune, he'd have a chance to reach the heavens in a single bound. This was a hard-won opportunity. How could he give it up? I'll definitely do it. Xianji nodded confidently. Without another word, she tossed the jade bottle to the guard captain. She's really giving it to him. When Yi Zichen saw that Xianji had really given away the pills of fortune, he felt his heart ache. Right now, he had the urge to do whatever he wanted. At worst, he'd just have to fight Zhou Wu. The pills of fortune were the most important. However, he'd already given them away, so there was no point in him acting like this now. All he could do was watch helplessly as the pills of fortune landed in the guard captain's hands. His heart ached. The captain of the guards carefully grabbed it. When he held the pill of fortune in his hand, he desperately wanted to open it. However, when he remembered that Xianji was still here and that there were so many people around, he forcibly suppressed the urge in his heart and put the jade bottle into his spatial divine artifact. Lady Providence, if you have no other orders, I'll take my leave, said the guard captain, his face flushed with excitement. Xianji nodded slightly and glanced at the ancestor of the Wang family on the ground. The guard captain understood. Xianji looked away, reached out, and grabbed Yi Zichen by the ear. Chapter 1360. Chapter 1360. Letting nature take its course. Yi Zichen had no way of knowing what would happen after that. At this time, Xianji had already pinched his ear and brought him to her residence. However, it didn't seem like there would be any major problems. The captain of the guards had made such a solemn vow, and it was Xianji who'd given him the pill of fortune. He wouldn't dare refuse. Otherwise, after obtaining the pill of fortune from Xianji, if he didn't handle this matter well, he wouldn't be able to survive in the god realm in the future. Auntie, it hurts, it hurts. Hurry up and let go. Xianji was really arrogant. Yi Zichen felt like his left ear wasn't his anymore. As soon as he entered the residence, he hurriedly patted her hand and complained about the pain. Xianji snorted and let go. When she did, Yi Zichen felt his ear burn. As he rubbed it, he saw Xianji glaring at him. Auntie. She was acting spoiled again. This time, Xianji didn't give Yi Zichen as much face as she did outside. Don't act spoiled. How old are you? Stop acting like a child in front of me, said Xianji. That's right, that's right. Pu Jingwan nodded in agreement. She couldn't stand Yi Zichen acting spoiled either. Shut up. Yi Zichen glared at Pu Jingwan. She still had the nerve to talk back? If she hadn't gone overboard, would things have turned out this way? Although Yi Zichen hadn't tried to stop her, before he could say anything else, he felt someone tug on his right ear. Who are you yelling at? Who are you yelling at? You got yourself into trouble, yet you want me to clean up after you? Why is this lady looking for you? You just shout at this lady. She glared at Yi Zichen, then let go. She smiled warmly at Pu Jingwan. Don't be afraid. I'm here. I'll support you. Thank you, Auntie. Pu Jingwan smiled sweetly. Yi Zichen was as speechless as he could be. He pursed his lips, sat down, and reached for the divine fruit. Put it down. Did I say you could move? This shout startled Yi Zichen so much that his hands trembled. At the same time, Xian Ji glared at him and put the divine fruit away. You still have the nerve to eat it? Do you know how much the nature pills I just gave out are worth? At the mention of the pill of fortune, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. Putting away the speechlessness in his heart, he rubbed his hands together and shamelessly moved closer. Auntie, do you have any more fortune pills? Can you give me some? No. Xian Ji coldly rolled her eyes at Yi Zichen, then snorted. And here I thought you were sensible enough to tell me when you got back to the Divine Mountains. Well, after all this time, you wanted me to clean up your mess. If you can cause trouble, you have to be able to resolve it. Don't you understand such a simple logic? I feel ashamed to have a nephew like you. You even have the cheek to ask me for the nature pill. Do you know that all the benefits I've gotten from your mother for so many years have all been returned just now? I've really suffered a great loss. From start to finish, Yi Zichen just scratched his head. He didn't dare to argue or retort. He was well aware of the value of the nature pills, and he knew that she'd really gone all out this time. It's just nature pills, isn't it? When the outside's resources arrive, I'll ask them for 100 bottles and return them to you. Yi Zichen pursed his lips. The outside? You really went to the outside? Asked Xian Ji. I did, and I even negotiated a big deal with them. Yi Zichen didn't feel like there was any need to hide such things from her. He trusted his mother's judgment. Since she'd chosen to be Xian Ji's best friend, she was naturally one of them. How was it? After you went, your worldview exploded, didn't it? Xian Ji chuckled. Xian Ji's smile was light, and her raised brows made it clear that she'd long since known about the outside's connection to the Third Era. It was as if everything was under her control. Yi Zichen couldn't help but find this strange. She even knew about the outside situation. Why was it that when he'd proposed to buy an on his behalf, she'd said she couldn't divine it at all? Was there really something in the world that even she couldn't divine? Yi Zichen didn't think too much about it. He nodded unhappily and said, Explosive. Quite explosive. That's for sure. There are no more than 5 people in the entire Third Era who know about the relationship between the First Era and the Third Era, and you're one of them. But don't worry too much. It's best to let nature take its course. If you try too hard to fight for it, it'll have the opposite effect. Her speech is always so clouded that it's hard to tell what she's trying to say. Could she be referring to celestial fate? Or something else? For Yi Zichen, this kind of person was the most difficult to communicate with. No matter what she said, she would stop there. As for what she wanted to say, it was up to others to guess. But no matter what she wanted to say, Yi Zichen simply nodded. I know. His original intention was to let nature take its course. He didn't want to deliberately get what he wanted. If it wasn't for the fact that Gu Li was in the dark and he was in the light, he had no idea how to obtain Gu Li's celestial fate. Even God Emperor Zhou Wu, a colossus that stood at the top of the God realm, could not be seen on the surface. Even if he had the outside support, gaining the right to challenge him wasn't something that could be accomplished overnight. He had to take things slowly and let nature take its course. It's good that you understand. Xian Ji didn't know if Yi Zichen really understood her, but all she could do was stop there. She could divine. Her divination abilities were unfathomable. But the more she knew, the more burdens she had to bear. There were some things that only she could know, but she couldn't say. If she said it herself, she didn't even dare imagine what the consequences would be. Stopping there was the most she could do for Yi Zichen. As for how much he could understand, that would depend on his comprehension abilities. Let's not talk about that. What did you come back to Heavenly God City for? Asked Xianji. Can't you divine? Said Yi Zichen. Do you think divination is as simple as eating? If you say you can divine it, then so be it. I have too many heavenly secrets to divine. I don't have time to deal with your trivial matters, said Xianji, rolling her eyes. After another round of insults, Yi Zichen pursed his lips innocently. Naturally, I came back for the Battle of Geniuses, but of course, I have a few other things to do. After that, Yi Zichen told Xianji about the plans he'd discussed with Xiao Yumei in Skyspan City. Naturally, he didn't forget to mention Xiao Ting's cooperation with the Yaoan demons. As she listened, Xianji's eyes grew brighter and brighter, and a smile spread across her face. Kid, your idea is pretty interesting. Chapter 1361. Lady Providence, who regarded wealth as her life, when she saw Yi Zichen's eager expression, she chuckled and shook her head in refusal. The plan was indeed a good one, and it sounded interesting and exciting. If she were an ordinary person and not the focus of the billions of gods, she might really nod and agree. What Yi Zichen said just now really did sound very tempting. Unfortunately, she was Xianji, the pavilion master of Heavenly God City's profound pavilion. She was Lady Providence, who served God Emperor Zhou Wu. Her every move was exposed to the eyes of the public, so she had to consider the impact. To put it nicely, his plan was exciting, but when he thought about it carefully, his idea was a little crazy. Joining his plan required not only interest, but courage as well. Xianji never lacked courage, but she had to think about her subordinate. That's too bad. You missed out on a chance to change history. Yi Zichen sighed on Xianji's behalf and shrugged. It is indeed a pity, said Xianji, unmoved. In truth, Yi Zichen had never really considered letting her join his plan. No one knew better than him just how insane it was. As the profound pavilion's pavilion master, everything about her was like a wind vane to the God Race clansmen. If she joined in, it might cause a lot of panic in the God Race, which would have the effect of alerting the enemy. Although he said this, he had once thought that Xianji would actually join them. If Xianji were to join them, then the entire profound pavilion would stand behind her, including all the major, small, and medium-sized powers that relied on the profound pavilion. Moreover, with the support of the profound pavilion behind him, everything he did would be justifiable and justified. Anyway, if Xianji wanted to join his plan, he'd raise both his hands and feet in approval. If she didn't want to join, it wouldn't affect his plan much. Besides, his main purpose in coming here was not to persuade her to join him. However, a little help is fine, right? Yi Zichen smiled. This was the main reason he had come to find Xianji. If he wanted to carry out his plan, he needed some prerequisite. If he were to rely solely on himself and use his status as the Outer Realm's special envoy to make a request to God Emperor Zhou Wu, Yi Zichen believed that he wouldn't refuse in this ambiguous situation. But in the future, God Emperor Zhou Wu would absolutely ponder Yi Zichen's actions. As a result, he didn't want to use God Emperor Zhou Wu to advance his goal. Xianji was second only to Zhou Wu in Heavenly God City. He believed that if he went to her, he would be able to achieve the same result. Furthermore, given their previous relationship, he wasn't worried that she would expose him. This time, Xianji paused. She naturally knew what Yi Zichen needed help with. Have you really thought about this? Xianji did not immediately agree. Instead, she repeated her question with a serious gaze. She was worried that Yi Zichen was acting on impulse and acting on impulse. Naturally. Yi Zichen nodded confidently and smiled. You should know that I have the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, right? Although I will be a rising force in the God Race, my combat power will not be inferior to the other families. Besides, the Yao servants in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda are no different from those clansmen who have been around for tens of thousands of years. They definitely won't betray me. The only difference between me and them is history. Of course. With the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, you can naturally form your own faction. But you need to know who you'll be facing in the future. Just the Yao servants in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Don't I still have you? Yi Zichen chuckled. Don't change the subject. You should know that I can't openly support you. Even your mother can't do it. Your plans have already affected the highest echelons of the god race. All I can do is do my best to prevent the other factions from suppressing you. That's all. Yi Zichen knew that she was telling the truth. She really was worried about him. Yi Zichen chuckled, then glanced at Pu Jingwan. Having her. Isn't that enough? Her. Xianji didn't even try to hide her gaze. Pu Jingwan's eyes were wide as she stared back at Yi Zichen and Xianji. She couldn't understand the conversation between the two of them at all, and now they were talking about her, which made her a little surprised. From the first era? Asked Xianji. Yi Zichen nodded. Xianji looked Pu Jingwan up and down, then said, If it's her, her cultivation is high enough, but if she wants to support your plans on her own, it's not enough. There's also the emissary from the other day. 2 of them? This time, Xianji was silent for a long while. She was considering whether or not the 2 of them could affect Yi Zichen's plans. After a long silence, she shook her head. The 2 of them are enough to intimidate a faction, but since you want to establish a faction, you're lacking mid-level experts. What if I had 20 rulers? Laughed Yi Zichen. What's going on with the first era? They even sent 20 rulers? Xianji was stunned, but this time, she didn't shake her head. With Yang Jian and Pu Jingwan, Yi Zichen only lacked ordinary rulers. He didn't need many of them. 5 or 6 would be enough. If Yi Zichen said 20, and there were Yao servants in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, then his faction would rival the other 8 Divine Mountains' Holy Lands. It was just as Yi Zichen said. He didn't lack people. He lacked a solid foundation of history. At this point, there was no need for Xianji to worry about him. If Yi Zichen wasn't just bragging, and everything he said was true, then the people he had would be more than enough to support his plans. As for herself, although she couldn't participate in this exciting plan, she could still help out in some small ways. All right, leave everything to me. I'll prepare everything you need as soon as possible, but how are we going to pay for this? Asked Xianji. If she wanted to prepare everything Yi Zichen needed, she'd need an ocean's worth of funds. As his aunt, she could give him a few trinkets, but her money didn't grow on trees. Furthermore, everyone in the god realm knew that she valued money as much as her life. Help me pay for it first. In a few days, when the outsiders send the resources over, I'll pay you back, said Yi Zichen. How long? Half a month at most. Yi Zichen's expression was confident. Xianji looked him up and down in disbelief, then thought for a while. Fine, but you have to pay me interest. How much? Asked Yi Zichen. Double. Before he'd even finished speaking, Xianji spoke up again. Don't be in such a hurry to refuse. If you don't agree, you can find someone else. In any case, I'm not losing anything. Don't even think about threatening me with pills of fortune. I'll just treat those pills as the profits I got from your mother. I won't feel any heartache. Wait, you want me to pay you back with pills of fortune? Said Yi Zichen. I used those pills for you in the first place. Don't you want to pay me back? Xianji furrowed her brows. Yi Zichen sighed deeply. His plan had to go through with kumquat love. Otherwise, the more time passed, the more passive he'd become. When he saw his aunt, who refused to budge an inch, he couldn't help but grimace. Chapter 1362. The God Emperor's invitation. No matter what Yi Zichen's expression was like, so long as he agreed, Xianji's mood improved tremendously. She'd spent so much money to resolve the matter, but now all her frustrations were swept away. She giggled, patted Yi Zichen on the shoulder, and nodded solemnly. No problem. Leave everything to me. I'll make sure you're satisfied. Yi Zichen couldn't help but stare at the sharp contrast. Just now, he'd understood his aunt's personality. She valued money as much as her life. If you said she was stingy, she just generously tossed out a dozen pills of fortune. If you said she was generous, she was a senior. How could she haggle over every ounce with a junior? She even demanded double compensation. Even though Yi Zichen had the outside backing him, he didn't need to bleed. Even so, the thought of double compensation still pained him to no end. If he gave upheaval twice the resources, they might be able to nurture quite a few experts capable of holding their own. In truth, any faction's leader would be like that. They had to fight for resources for their faction and nurture their subordinate. But the way Yi Zichen saw it, Xianji was just greedy. What kind of subordinates did she have? Divine generals? Did she need to nurture people of that level? She obviously didn't. And yet, she still couldn't let go of money. Wasn't that just because she valued money as much as her life? Yi Zichen pursed his lips, then glanced at Xianji, who was still smiling at their victory. He couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Now you know you're my aunt." Xianji ignored Yi Zichen's mutterings. She'd taken advantage of him, so she had to restrain herself. "My dear nephew, I'm off to tend to your affairs. If you want to stay here, then stay. If not, you can go to the Divine Martial Academy." Xianji smiled. Did the Battle of Geniuses take place? After that huge commotion, Yi Zichen and Yang Jian had left for the outside. He wasn't sure if the Battle of Geniuses had taken place, but judging by the security around Heavenly God City, as well as the occasional Yao and Demon experts, the Battle of Geniuses was most likely still going on. Otherwise, there was no way those Yao and Demon experts would be so brazen as to roam Heavenly God City. Of course, this is a rare opportunity for the Yao race and Demon race to freely enter the Divine Mountain. How could they give it up so easily? Xianji's smile faded and she snorted. Those guys have been up to some tricks lately. Haven't you seen it for yourself? Security in Heavenly God City is very tight. They investigate everyone very strictly. Yi Zichen nodded. He had experienced this firsthand. If it weren't for the strict investigation, he wouldn't have caused such a commotion. He arched his brows at Xianji, then pointed at Pu Jingwan. "Aunt Jingwan is from the outer region. She doesn't have our Divine Mountain's crystal card, and it's very inconvenient for her to move around the Divine Mountain. Do you have any way to make her?" "This is simple." As she spoke, she took out a piece of white jade branded with the character Xian, and placed it in Pu Jingwan's hand. "In the future, if anyone tries to investigate you, show them this jade token. Once they see this jade token, they won't investigate you anymore." The jade token was made of white jade, but it was just an ordinary forging material. There was nothing special about it. At first glance, it was probably just a symbol of status in the profound pavilion. Pu Jingwan nodded in thanks, then put it away. Although her cultivation was high enough that she could do whatever she wanted on the Divine Mountain, she didn't want to resort to violence every time. Since she had this jade token, she naturally liked it. Pu Jingwan nodded in thanks, then put it away. She was as gentle as a kitten. She couldn't be so fierce every day. If Yi Zichen knew what she was thinking, he'd definitely copy the way she'd booed Yi Zichen and pretend to puke. She was as gentle as a kitten? Yi Zichen punched the Wang family ancestor right in the face, embedding him several meters into the ground. Gentle like that? By now, Xianji was already preparing to carry out Yi Zichen's request. She knew his plan and knew that they couldn't afford to delay. Judging from the flickering jade slip in her hand, she was probably already contacting all the connections she could use. Yi Zichen prepared to return to the Divine Martial Academy to see his friends at Skyspan Academy. No matter what, he was one of Anti-Upheaval's participants in the Battle of Geniuses. Fortunately, every team could send a substitute. Otherwise, Anti-Upheaval would be done for. However, Xianji, who was in the middle of sending messages, suddenly furrowed her brows. "Don't go yet. Someone wants to see you." Xianji put the jade slip away and walked over. When Yi Zichen heard this, He turned around and saw that her expression wasn't particularly good. Zhou? Oh? Little guy, could it be that you're talented in divination as well? Xianji smiled calmly. This indirectly proved that Zhou Wu really did want to see him. Yi Zichen chuckled. All cultivators knew how to perform divination, but it depended on whether they were skilled or not. Given Yi Zichen's skill in this field, how could he possibly know that Zhou Wu was looking for him? All he'd done was analyze Xianji's expression and the actual situation. In the entire Divine Mountain, the only person who could make her look so serious was God Emperor Zhou Wu. Do you know why he's looking for me? Asked Yi Zichen. How could I possibly know? No one can guess what he's thinking. But if you really think about it, there are only a few reasons why he's looking for you, said Xianji. The Yao Ceiling Pagoda? The 5 Elements Great Emperor or the outside? Asked Yi Zichen. It seems you're more or less aware of the situation. Xianji smiled noncommittally. But no matter which reason he wants to see me, it's not a good thing for me, is it? Said Yi Zichen. Xianji pursed her lips, but didn't deny it. The relationship between the 5 Elements Great Emperor and Zhou Wu was completely unknown to the ordinary people of the God realm. How exactly did he obtain the Emperor's celestial fate? How did he ascend to the position of God Emperor? However, people at Xianji's level were well aware of the situation. Comparatively speaking, it was better for the outside to seek Yi Zichen out. Even Zhou Wu had to be wary of the outside. But the Yao Ceiling Pagoda had appeared, and it was in Yi Zichen's hands at that. How could he possibly not mention it? Do I have to go? Asked Yi Zichen. You have to go. Xianji gave an affirmative answer to Yi Zichen's question. Regardless of why he wants to see you, and regardless of the conflict between you, he's still the God Emperor of the God realm. If he wants to see a minor cultivator like you, who hasn't even become a diviner, it's like an ancient emperor wanting to see a commoner. What reason do you have to refuse? But you don't need to worry. Let this girl follow you. Add to that your relationship with the First Era, and he won't dare do anything to you. Even if he's the God Emperor, if he wants to deal with someone with connections to the outside, he'll have to think twice about whether or not it's a good deal. As he listened to Xianji's analysis, Yi Zichen sank into deep thought. She was right. But then he thought about it. The God Emperor was a lofty existence, and he hadn't angered him in the slightest. There was no reason for him to lower himself to deal with a nobody like him. Besides, in the future, he'd steal the God Emperor's celestial fate. They'd run into each other sooner or later. He'd just brought it forward a little. In that case, what exactly was Zhou Wu planning? Chapter 1363. The Divine Arbiter Up in the Sky. After confirming that they were going to see Zhou Wu, Xianji led Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan away from Heavenly God City. As they headed north, Heavenly God City grew further and further away from them. Even with Yi Zichen's half-step diviner eyesight, he couldn't quite make out the largest city in the God realm. If Zhou Wu isn't looking for me, shouldn't we go to his estate? Yi Zichen watched the city disappear from sight. He couldn't help but ask Xianji. The God Emperor isn't in Heavenly God City right now, said Xianji. He really is ambitious. Even at a time like this, he dares not personally oversee the city? This is a great opportunity. If the Yaoan demons suddenly launch an attack on Heavenly God City, wouldn't it be interesting if their headquarters were destroyed? Said Yi Zichen. The gods have stood between the Yaoan demons for hundreds of millions of years. Do you really think they'll be so easy to conquer? Xianji glanced at Yi Zichen, her gaze deep and meaningful. It was as if she were replying to Yi Zichen's joke, but at the same time, it was as if she were ringing a warning bell. Yi Zichen felt a bit uncomfortable and looked away. When he looked away, Xianji sighed. It's not as simple as you think. In order to save time, Xianji wrapped Yi Zichen in her divine power and hurried on as fast as she could. Several hours passed, but they still hadn't reached Zhou Wu's location. Yi Zichen lost track of how many mountain ranges they'd passed. Suddenly, a white mist appeared before him. "We're here." Xianji, who'd wrapped Yi Zichen with her divine power, stopped and retracted it. The instant it disappeared, Yi Zichen instinctively shouted, "It's so hot! It's so hot!" Yi Zichen hurriedly used his divine power to erect an astral wall around him. Only then did he feel a bit better. However, the onslaught of heat was still unbearable. Only then did he notice that the white mist he'd seen earlier was actually white smoke. Right in front of them should be an active volcano. Why is Zhou Wu in a place like this? Yi Zichen couldn't help but mutter to himself. When you see the God Emperor later, remember to pinpoint your position. Don't think too highly of yourself. At the end of the day, he was the person who stood at the peak of this world. The reason why he called the foreign emissary brother was because his realm was similar to Zhou Wu's. He had to give the foreign emissary some face. You're just a celestial being. Even if you have a relationship with the outer realm, it's nothing in his eyes. After all, this is the third era, not the first era. However, don't put yourself too low, or else he will look down on you. As for the degree, you just have to control yourself. Xianji focused her gaze and transmitted to Yi Zichen. She didn't speak directly. This place was already within the range of the God Emperor's domain. Even the slightest movement here would be known by him. After receiving the transmission, Yi Zichen nodded. He wasn't an idiot. He understood the simple principle of speaking to different people. As for putting on airs, he naturally wouldn't do that. All experts had their own pride. Not to mention God Emperor Zhou Wu, who controlled the entire celestial race. Even a small figure like him would definitely go up and give that heaven immortal a few slaps if a heaven immortal expert shouted at him because he had the backing of a powerful expert. It's good that you know what you're doing. Xianji's transmission appeared in his sea of consciousness once more. She turned to Pu Jingwan. Jingwan, use your divine power to relieve some of the pressure on him. Given his current cultivation, there's no way he'll be able to take it. I'm done for. Pu Jingwan seized the opportunity to mock Yi Zichen, but her divine power didn't cover her. Yi Zichen was speechless in the face of such mockery. His cultivation was inferior to hers. What could he say? The only person he could complain about was Zhou Wu. The god race was vast, but he'd chosen to meet here. It was intentional, wasn't it? Just as Yi Zichen was cursing God Emperor Zhou Wu inwardly, a nun floated towards them from the direction of the active volcano. Lady Providence, the God Emperor has been waiting inside for a long time. He specially asked me to bring you in. The nun's tone was very soft. Xianji said, "Don't worry. Thank you, Divine Arbiter." Yi Zichen followed the nun into the Divine Mountain. As they got closer and closer to the volcano, the surrounding temperature rose exponentially, and Pu Jingwan's divine power increased correspondingly as well. After another hour or so, Yi Zichen and company arrived at the foot of the volcano. Yi Zichen stood at the foot of the mountain and looked up at the volcano in front of him. The entire volcano towered into the clouds, while scorching lava flowed down the crater. In such an extremely hot environment, no vegetation could grow in the surroundings. As far as the eye could see, the surrounding environment also seemed to be scorched by magma. At the foot of the volcano were dozens of meter-deep ditches. The scorching lava flowed into these ditches, then converged in front of a thatched hut covered in jade-green vines. Neither the thatched hut nor the vines were burned by the scorching lava. When the lava got within 10 meters of the hut, it vanished into thin air. Yi Zichen had no idea where it went. "Your Excellency, I'm truly envious of your attainments in the art of space," said Xianji. "You praise me too much, Lady Providence. Your divination techniques are truly impressive," said the Divine Arbiter. Yi Zichen couldn't help but knit his brows. Attainments in the art of space? Then he recalled that Xianji had been looking in the direction of the thatched hut. Could it be that the hut's space was isolated from the outside world? No wonder, even though it was clearly just a thatched hut, it was enscathed by the lava, and even had vines growing around it. Also, the lava that disappeared 10 meters away from the straw hut should have been teleported to another place. This nun wasn't ordinary at all. You people are so strong. I can't see through your auntie, and I can't see through this nun either, transmitted Pu Jingwan to Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen froze inexplicably. Even Pu Jingwan said she couldn't see through her. This nun. Just what kind of people did the God Emperor surround Zhou Wu? It seemed that Xianji's earlier words really were a warning. He'd thought that with Pu Jingwan and Yang Jian's help, he could do whatever he wanted in the Third Era. It seemed things really weren't as simple as he'd thought. The Divine Arbiter and Xianji exchanged flattering glances with Yi Zichen. When Yi Zichen noticed her gaze, he instinctively tensed up. This is the youth the God Emperor wanted to see, as well as your dear nephew, right? Asked the Divine Arbiter, her tone as warm as ever. That's right, that good-for-nothing nephew of mine. Xianji nodded. Lady Providence, you must be joking. I heard the Xinyuan sword and Yao Sealing Pagoda are in his hands. He's won the favor of 2 peerless divine artifacts, yet you say he's good for nothing? What about my juniors? The Divine Arbiter shook her head. Yi Zichen's expression instantly froze. She'd brought up the Xinyuan sword and the Yao Sealing Pagoda at a time like this. Although it sounded like she'd brought them up in passing, there was absolutely no way it was that simple. How could this kid possibly compare to the Divine Arbiter's juniors? Your little niece is a divine general of the God realm, and she's in charge of defending a territory. Even your eldest nephew can go toe-to-toe with Shuiyang. Look at my nephew. He hasn't even reached the diviner level yet. He didn't win the favor of a divine artifact just because he was lucky. Chapter 1364. The God Emperor has appeared. The Divine Arbiter was the only one in the vicinity of the volcano. From watching period dramas, it was easy to see that when ancient emperors were traveling incognito or high officials were accompanied by their most trusted aide. From this, it was clear how important the Divine Arbiter was to the God Emperor, and how much he trusted her. Normally, trusted aides would pledge their lives to their master. Never mind the fact that the Divine Arbiter's cultivation was so high that not even Pu Jingwan could see through her. Just now, Xianji had mentioned her juniors. Her youngest niece was a divine general, and her oldest nephew was strong enough to fight Shuiyang. Who was Shuiyang? He was the emperor of the northern divine mountain, the Sea of Innocence. He ruled over an entire divine mountain. Setting aside just how many subordinate clans the God Emperor's estate had, just the Divine Arbiter's juniors alone were enough to shock anyone who heard of them. Yi Zichen tried to control his emotions, but when he heard all this, his heart raced. Thump, thump. Just what kind of colossus would the God Emperor be? He'd only revealed the tip of the iceberg, but it was already enough to make him feel this way? He had to calm down. Yi Zichen lowered his head and gradually calmed his racing heart. The Divine Arbiter was one of Zhou Wu's subordinates. The God Emperor had called him here, which meant he'd clearly noticed him. If he acted too unnaturally, the God Emperor's attention would only deepen. What should he do now? If he were just a cultivator with no enmity towards the God Emperor, then what should he do? How should he behave at this time? Yi Zichen, who remained silent, continuously calculated in his heart. Then, he thought of how he should behave. He felt a little awkward, a little humiliated, and grumbled. Auntie. With a soft call, Yi Zichen's expression and state of mind transformed into the expression he'd imagined. From start to finish, the Divine Arbiter's smile was as gentle as ever. However, no one noticed that she'd glanced at Yi Zichen several times. From the moment he'd heard Xianji mention the Divine Arbiter's cultivation realm, his heart had raced, to the moment he'd gradually calmed down and pretended to be a reluctant child after being exposed by Xianji. She'd seen everything. Although it was only for an instant, she'd still seen it. She withdrew her gaze. There was no longer any need for her to pay too much attention to Yi Zichen. The other party had already concealed the changes in his emotions very well, so he would definitely not give himself away in the future. She knew everything she wanted to know. You still won't let me talk about it? You only know how to cause trouble for me, your aunt. Tell me, how did I end up with an unlucky nephew like you? Look at the Divine Arbiter's descendants. Some of their grandchildren have even become divine generals. Look at you. Xianji's mouth was full of sighs. She was no different from an elder who was worried to death for her juniors. Yi Zichen scratched his head, then lowered it, as if he couldn't face Xianji's words. But as he lowered his head, all he could think about was whether or not he had fooled the Divine Arbiter. All right, Xianji, my juniors have all lived for hundreds of years. The level of one's realm also depended on how long one had cultivated. This had nothing to do with seniority. Given your nephew's talent, I'm sure that by the time he reaches my nephew's age, he'll be even more accomplished than he is, said the Divine Arbiter with a smile. I don't have any delusions that he can compare to that kid, Jinghua. If he can become a ruler while he's still alive, I'll burn incense to the heavens, said Xianji with a sigh. Jinghua. Xianji's seemingly casual mention of his name, but Yi Zichen committed it to memory. If Jinghua was strong enough to go toe-to-toe with Shuiyang, he might become a major obstacle in his future plans to deal with Zhou Wu. The Divine Arbiter laughed, as if to end this conversation. After a few more sighs, she spoke again. Why isn't the God Emperor here yet? Ha 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 ha. Hearty laughter reverberated through the sky. Yi Zichen looked in the direction of the voice and saw a man covered in flowing lava emerge from the mouth of the volcano. Scorching hot magma dripped from his body onto the ground. After coming into contact with the magma, a small pit instantly appeared on the ground. It could be seen just how high the temperature of the magma was, but that person was completely enscathed under the magma. The God Emperor? Yi Zichen silently watched the lava man fall to the ground. As the lava receded, the man's appearance was revealed. His face was resolute and hearty, and his expression was dignified. His entire body radiated a heroic aura. Yi Zichen had seen this man before. He was none other than the God race's God Emperor, Zhou Wu. Greetings, Your Majesty. Xianji bowed in greeting, and Yi Zichen followed suit. Only Pu Jingwan didn't move. She simply watched calmly. Pu Jingwan's inaction naturally drew Zhou Wu's attention, but he only glanced at her for a moment, then looked away. Chuckling, he helped Xianji and Yi Zichen to their feet. When there's no one else around, there's no need for such cliché. Zhou Wu smiled calmly, then turned to Xianji. Just now, I thought I heard you ask why I wasn't here yet. What? Could it be that I've made you wait too long? Are you getting impatient, Lady Providence? God Emperor, you know I... Xianji tried to explain, but the God Emperor cut her off. He shook his head and said, I was just joking. Why do you have to be so serious about everything you do? You're one of the few people I can trust in a situation like this. How could I not know what you're thinking? That's right. Xianji nodded. He chuckled and chatted with Xianji for a bit longer. Their conversation revolved around Heavenly God City's recent developments. Xianji gave him a simple report. After confirming that there was nothing to worry about, the God Emperor smiled, walked past her, and arrived before Yi Zichen. Your Majesty, said Yi Zichen. The God Emperor didn't speak directly. Instead, he looked at him for a moment, then nodded and smiled. As expected, heroes come from the young. Things were a bit chaotic back at the Divine Martial Academy, so I didn't get a chance to chat with you. By the time I tried to find you, I heard you'd already left for the outside. At the time, I felt sorry for you, but I was too eager to find you. When I found out you were Xianji's nephew, I told her I'd bring you over when you returned. I never would have guessed that you'd already returned. This junior is afraid, said Yi Zichen, taking a step back. This junior is but an ordinary person. My cultivation has yet to reach the diviner level, Yet I've caught the God Emperor's attention. You haven't reached the diviner level yet, but you're still too young. Given your talent, you're no ordinary fish. Becoming a diviner is nothing more than child's play. The God Emperor wasn't stingy with his praise. He laughed heartily. Chapter 1365. An overt plot. God Emperor Zhou Wu laughed heartily. It was hard to imagine that a mighty God Emperor would speak to a minor character who hadn't even reached the diviner level. Anyone could tell that this compliment wasn't sincere. In fact, it made them feel uncomfortable. In the end, he mentioned the outside. Could it be that he feared the outside? Perhaps a little. But that was absolutely no reason for him to flatter Yi Zichen. It was just as Xianji had told Yi Zichen. God Emperor Zhou Wu was arrogant. Even if Yi Zichen had the outside support, he wouldn't lower himself to flatter him like this. I'm afraid. Yi Zichen couldn't figure out God Emperor Zhou Wu's intentions. This time, he no longer referred to himself as a junior. Instead, he referred to himself as, I'm afraid. This meant that he was constantly retreating. He was using the title to widen the distance between him and God Emperor Zhou Wu. Your nephew is just like you. Zhou Wu glanced coolly at Yi Zichen, then turned to Xianji. Like? Yi Zichen's current behavior was completely proper. He didn't cross the line, but he understood Xianji's personality. Even though she considered herself his aunt, she and Yi Zichen were old friends. She didn't put on the airs of a senior at all. She loved to joke around, join in on the fun, and gossip about others. She wasn't proper at all. Yet now Zhou Wu was saying Yi Zichen was like her? In terms of normal personalities, they were indeed very similar, but right now Yi Zichen didn't resemble her in the slightest. The only explanation was that when Xianji faced God Emperor Zhou Wu, she behaved the same way. When he thought back to her attitude toward Zhou Wu, she behaved herself. Now that he thought about it, they really did resemble each other. Xianji smiled but said nothing. Zhou Wu turned around, clasped his hands behind his back, and walked toward the thatched cottage at the foot of the volcano. Let's talk inside. Yi Zichen instinctively glanced at Xianji, hoping to get something out of her. However, when he looked over, he discovered that she wasn't looking at him at all. Instead, she followed the God Emperor. She didn't make any eye contact, nor did she send any divine sense transmissions. Yi Zichen took a deep breath, then followed them. Pu Jingwan and Yi Zichen followed. When Yi Zichen arrived at the thatched hut, Pu Jingwan retracted her divine power. Only now did he confirm that this space had indeed been cut open. There was no scorching heat, nor was there the pungent smell of volcanic smoke. He could vaguely smell the faint fragrance of grass, and he could see a few snow rabbits gnawing on carrots in the fenced courtyard. It was really magical, Yi Zichen exclaimed in his heart. You can also see that the surrounding area is covered in volcanoes. There is no vegetation at all. Cultivating in seclusion here for a long time is very stressful, so I had the Divine Arbiter carve out a space within the Divine Mountain and place it here. That way, when I have free time, I can relax a little. As if sensing Yi Zichen's astonishment, the God Emperor smiled and explained. Yi Zichen nodded, then retracted his gaze. God Emperor Zhou Wu didn't seem to notice him, but Yi Zichen could sense his every move. Inexplicably, Yi Zichen remembered that this was Zhou Wu's domain. He also understood why Xianji had ignored him and followed the God Emperor. Can't I say or do anything? Everyone sit. There's no need to be so nervous. In the outside world, I'm the God Emperor of the God race, but in private, I'm just an ordinary cultivator seeking to transcend. I invited you here, so you're all my honored guests. Zhou Wu chuckled. With a wave of his hand, a stone table appeared in the courtyard, laden with immortal nectar, divine fruits, and rare treasures. Yi Zichen and the others took their seat. The Divine Arbiter stood behind the God Emperor. Miss, you're from the outside, right? If you were a member of the God race, there's no way I wouldn't recognize you. Zhou Wu's gaze landed on Pu Jingwan. That's right. Pu Jingwan nodded. The outside really is a land of fortune. In the face of Pu Jingwan's cold indifference, Zhou Wu maintained his smile and sighed. You could say that, said Pu Jingwan noncommittally. Little friend Yi. As he spoke, Zhou Wu shifted the topic back to Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen instantly tensed up when his name was called. He looked towards Zhou Wu and heard him speak. Little friend, you seem to be very wary of me, but you don't have to be nervous. I didn't ask you to come here for anything special. The Outer Realm looked for you before, and I called you here to ask what the Outer Realm told you. So straightforward? Yi Zichen found Zhou Wu's straightforwardness hard to believe. He had thought that Zhou Wu would beat around the bush and ask about it, but Zhou Wu asked him directly. An open scheme? It made sense. At Zhou Wu's level, he could no longer be bothered with scheming. He just wanted to ask openly. Nothing, said Yi Zichen. That doesn't make sense. Little friend, you are from our third era, but the first era went out of their way to find you. If we didn't say anything, it wouldn't make sense. What's wrong? Don't you want to tell me? Yi Zichen remained silent. Hearing this, Xianji furrowed her brows. God Emperor Zhou Wu raised his brows. Oh? You don't want to tell me? Instantly, Yi Zichen sensed the atmosphere grow heavy. Not good. Yi Zichen had been silent just now because he was trying to figure out how to answer, but his silence had aroused Zhou Wu's suspicions. Fortunately, Zhou Wu quickly chuckled. It seems the Outer Realm told you something important, but it wasn't convenient for you to tell me. Not really, said Yi Zichen. He'd said something wrong just now, so he tried to salvage the situation. It's mainly because they told me something inexplicable. I didn't think there was any need to tell you, God Emperor. Tell me about it. Zhou Wu chuckled. They went to find me and told me that the first era's master of the stars had died, and that the era was about to be destroyed. Something like that happened. Zhou Wu was stunned. They even asked me who the third era's Emperor's celestial fate was. I was a bit confused. What exactly is Emperor's celestial fate? I've never even heard of it, said Yi Zichen. What did you say to them after that? I don't even know what Emperor's celestial fate is for. Of course, I said I don't know. That's it? Yi Zichen put on a thoughtful expression. They also said that if our era wanted to avoid the calamity of the end of our era, someone had to truly transcend. They even said how to transcend. Yi Zichen paused on purpose. God Emperor Zhou Wu's emotions were completely on edge, and he waited intently for Yi Zichen to continue. Right, I remember now. After a brief silence, Yi Zichen patted his head in understanding. They said that only those with Emperor's celestial fate can transcend. No one else has the fate to transcend. Zhou Wu, Xianji, the divine arbiter, and even Pu Jingwan's pupils constricted. Yi Zichen sneered inwardly. An open scheme. Chapter 1366. So what if I tell you everything? The God Emperor didn't hide anything and asked about the outside. This was an overt plot. Yi Zichen didn't hide anything either. He told him everything about the outside and how he'd transcended. This was also an overt plot. However, when he answered, he'd left out a few important bits of information. However, he was the only one who knew this. God Emperor Zhou Wu did not know. Truth and lies. When 30% of the lie was paired with 70% of the truth, it would be the truth if it was told to others. As expected, when God Emperor Zhou Wu heard this news, his expression changed slightly. Pu Jingwan and Xian Ji frowned at Yi Zichen. How could he tell them all this? The God Emperor lived up to his reputation. In the face of such shocking news, he quickly calmed down. He smiled out of habit, but when he spoke again, he found it difficult to maintain his natural composure. The outside actually told you all this? What? Is this really that amazing news? Yi Zichen feigned a look of confusion, then sighed regretfully. Perhaps they're just trying any doctor they can find in a desperate situation. When they told me that the outside was about to be breached, their expressions were quite unsightly, as if a great catastrophe was about to befall them. Is that so? Zhou laughed. But why did they choose you, little friend Yi? What do you mean? Whoosh. Yi Zichen instantly shot to his feet, his eyes trembling. Your Majesty, you don't think I'm lying to you, do you? I absolutely wouldn't dare. They came to find me because of my friend. In fact, I went to the outer realms because my friend wanted to take me there to play for a few days. When the people there heard that I was from the Third Era, they found me and told me a bunch of nonsense. I didn't understand any of it, so all I could do was nod and agree. After that, I didn't take it to heart. I stayed with my friends for a few days, then returned. From start to finish, Zhou Wu looked at Yi Zichen with an indifferent, judgmental gaze. Even though Yi Zichen's voice trembled so much that he sounded like he was about to cry, he didn't tell him to stop. He simply waited for him to finish. Little friend Yi, I'm curious to know that you have friends from the outside. That brother of mine used to be from our Third Era as well. He's from one of our subordinate planes. He ascended 100 years before I did. As for how he got to the outside, I don't know either, said Yi Zichen without the slightest hesitation. The atmosphere was especially tense. Although there was no anger on the Divine Emperor's face, his questioning tone was enough to make the people in the courtyard feel extremely pressured. Yi Zichen lowered his head and panted heavily. At that moment, Zhou Wu smiled. Raise your head. Yi Zichen looked up without any hesitation. The fear on his face was not fake, and his fingers and legs were trembling slightly. It could be said that the current Yi Zichen was the epitome of someone on the brink of terror. After sizing him up a few times, a bright smile appeared on the Divine Emperor's face. This Emperor is overthinking things. Little friend, please don't take offense. As he spoke, a set of silver-white battle armor appeared in Zhou Wu's hand. This is something I obtained by chance in the outer realm. I'm giving it to you as an apology. Your Majesty, please don't blame me. How could I dare accept such a precious reward? Said Yi Zichen. Zhou Wu said nothing. He simply placed the armor on the table. Xianji hurriedly put it away, then glared at Yi Zichen. His Majesty, the God Emperor, gave it to you. Just accept it. Hurry up and thank him. Thank you, God Emperor. Yi Zichen bowed deeply. No need for formalities. Sit. Only then did Zhou Wu smile. He watched as Xianji dragged Yi Zichen to a seat, then said, Little friend Yi, I'm a bit curious. You just said that the Emperor Star's celestial fate can transcend. Can you explain it to me in detail? I don't remember the whole thing, because I don't know what they were talking about, and I didn't listen too closely. Basically, they said that the Emperor Star's celestial fate is the key to transcending. So long as you possess it, you can transcend. But transcendence isn't like ordinary cultivation, where you advance step by step. Transcendence is about leaping out of the restrictions of the laws. Yi Zichen was afraid that he hadn't explained everything in detail, so he used divine mechanics to explain the diagram Han Nan had drawn for him to Zhou Wu once more. Leaping out, leaping out. After listening to Yi Zichen's explanation, Zhou Wu fell into deep thought. Occasionally, he frowned in thought, then glanced at the diagram Yi Zichen had drawn. He repeated Yi Zichen's words over and over again. Are there realms above transcendence? Asked Zhou Wu suddenly. They didn't say that, so I don't think so, said Yi Zichen. Then why did the First Era's Master of the Stars die? That. They didn't say anything. I asked. The God Emperor fell silent once more. His majestic gaze was like a sharp blade as he stared intently at the diagram Yi Zichen had just drawn. He had many thoughts running through his head. Yi Zichen's explanation of leaping out of the laws was something he'd never considered before, nor had he considered it in that direction. Now that he'd drawn the diagram, he'd vaguely touched upon a path he'd never touched before, but he was still missing the final step. Thank you, little friend Yi, for dispelling my doubts. I Zhou Wu am deeply grateful. Zhou Wu rose to his feet, then bowed deeply to Yi Zichen. Both Xianji and Yi Zichen hurriedly rose to their feet. How could I possibly dare accept such a bow from you, Your Majesty? Said Yi Zichen, terrified. You're exaggerating, Your Majesty. My nephew is a member of the God race, and you're our supreme leader. You're our hope for transcendence. It's his good fortune to be able to help you. There's no need for you to do this, said Xianji fearfully. No, I still have to thank him. Even if I'm the God Emperor, I have to do the same. God Emperor Zhou Wu pursed his lips into a smile, and 2 bottles of elixirs appeared in his hands. Here are 2 bottles of pills of fortune. It seems you gave away one earlier, so I'll make it up for you. You already know, said Xianji with a bitter smile. I can understand your desire to protect your nephew. Besides, you did the right thing. If Wang Chun had really injured little friend Yi, I wouldn't have been able to learn so much about the outside and transcendent. You don't need to worry about the Wang family. In a moment, I'll send the Divine Arbiter over to calm them down, and we'll let this matter rest. Your Majesty is magnanimous. Let's leave it at that. You and little friend Yi can go back now. After what he said, I've gained some enlightenment. I need to go into seclusion as soon as possible. I'll leave the Divine Mountain's affairs to you. Don't worry. Xianji nodded. With that, Xianji took her leave with Yi Zichen. At that moment, Zhou Wu suddenly spoke. Chapter 1367. Through as soon as Zhou Wu said he wanted to become sworn brothers, the surrounding air seemed to grow still. Yi Zichen put down his foot. His eyes widened in shock as he tried to recall what he'd just said. Become sworn brothers? Zhou Wu and him? Just what kind of brain circuitry was required to say something like that? Xianji turned around, her eyes brimming with disbelief. Even she couldn't understand why Zhou Wu would think something like that in a situation like this. God Emperor Zhou Wu said with a smile while the crowd was still confused. I was just joking with you. You're dismissed. I'll take my leave. She bowed to Zhou Wu, then wrapped Yi Zichen up with her divine power and left. After watching them leave the courtyard, Zhou Wu said with a smile on his face. How was it? Did you see anything? The Divine Arbiter pursed her lips. Earlier, I tested him. When he mentioned you, his emotions clearly fluctuated wildly. I can't confirm whether or not he's really the heir of the 5 elements. Because he hid it very well, I only caught a glimpse of it for an instant. After that, I didn't sense anything out of the ordinary. This fellow is indeed someone who knows how to cover up. The God Emperor gave his affirmation and said, Is there anything else? Xianji's behavior is a bit strange. What do you mean? She deliberately mentioned my descendant a few times. Although she said it in a casual tone, I could tell she was doing it on purpose. It was as if she was saying it for someone to hear, said the Divine Arbiter after a moment's thought. In your opinion, who do you think she was saying it for? Asked the God Emperor. I think she was saying it for him to hear, said the Divine Arbiter. From start to finish, the woman by his side didn't react in the slightest. When he heard the Divine Arbiter's analysis, Zhou Wu's smile grew wider and wider. He tapped his fingers on the table, narrowed his eyes, and looked ahead. Before long, he arched his brows. They left so quickly? It seems they don't like staying in my domain. Your Excellency, the way I see it, Xianji might not really. Before the Divine Arbiter could finish, Zhou Wu cut her off. Don't spout nonsense. The Divine Arbiter hurriedly shut her mouth and stopped slandering him. Zhou Wu continued smiling as he looked at the snow hare that was hopping around in the yard. How credible do you think what he said just now is? You mean, everything he said, God Emperor Zhou Wu said. Just now, Yi Zichen's disguise was on point. Not even the God Emperor could see through it. From his facial expression to the glint in his eyes, to his breathing and heartbeat, there wasn't a single flaw. However, the God Emperor knew full well that Yi Zichen was putting on an act. Zhou Wu understood why that was the case, but he didn't want to talk about it. What he cared about was what Yi Zichen had just said. The outer realm was about to be destroyed. The Star Lord had fallen. If anyone else were to hear this news, they would definitely think that it was fake. However, when Yi Zichen said it, the God Emperor had a vague feeling that everything he said was true. If he really wanted to tell a lie, there was no need for him to say such a lie. Therefore, the God Emperor somewhat believed what he said. There was also the picture on the table. Transcendence wasn't about cultivating step by step. It was about escaping the shackles of the laws. This sort of explanation was truly novel to the God Emperor. It wasn't exactly enlightening, but it did make him feel enlightened. It was possible that the God Emperor's greatest gain from this meeting was this painting. In my opinion, said the Divine Arbiter after a moment's hesitation. The Divine Arbiter hesitated for a moment, then said, I believe his words are 70% believable. The death of the Master of the Stars and the destruction of the Outlands are all believable. The only thing worth considering is his method of transcendence. You're pretty much on my wavelength, said the God Emperor with a calm smile. The Divine Arbiter pursed her lips. Transcendence was a realm that only rulers could vaguely sense. It was a realm that every expert of any era dreamed of reaching. Everything Yi Zichen said made perfect sense. His friend might have gone to the outside due to some sort of fortuitous encounter. He and his friend might have gone to the outside for a few days. None of that was a problem. The problem was, why would someone from the outside tell a minor figure like him, who hadn't even reached the diviner level? From his tone, it was obvious that he was pretending to faint. He'd said several times that he didn't understand anything and hadn't paid much attention to what the outsiders had to say. But even under these circumstances, when you asked him, he explained everything he could. Although it wasn't all that detailed, you could see the gist of it. Besides, he hadn't reached the diviner level, and he didn't have the Emperor Star's celestial fate. So why would the outsiders tell him the method of transcendence? Could it be that he was an auxiliary star or fated star, and they wanted him to return, find the Emperor's star, and tell him? Everyone knew that the auxiliary stars and fated stars were loyal only to the Emperor's star. You could say they were loyal, but you could also say they were foolishly loyal. They absolutely wouldn't share information that could help the Emperor's star with outsiders. Unless the Emperor's star agreed or told them himself, they wouldn't. During their conversation just now, Yi Zichen had kept his mouth shut in response to Zhou Wu's questions. Zhou Wu might have suspected he was an auxiliary star or fated star, but he'd feigned fear and told them everything. Zhou Wu couldn't help but suspect him. The only possibility was that Yi Zichen was the Emperor's star. That would explain everything. Whether it was the outsiders telling him about the method of transcendence, or the ownership of the Xianyuan sword and 5 elements Great Emperor's Yao Ceiling Pagoda, he could explain everything perfectly. Really? God Emperor Zhou Wu pursed his lips as if he sighed, but his gaze remained fixed on the diagram on the table. Your Majesty, I think we can give it a try. Regardless of whether he's telling the truth or not, you have the Emperor Star's celestial fate, and his method of transcendence is truly novel. You might really be able to transcend, said the Divine Arbiter. That's exactly what I was thinking. God Emperor Zhou Wu nodded noncommittally as he stared at the erupting volcano in the distance. Back when the 5 elements Tao destroyed the 5 elements, the God Emperor had spent tens of thousands of years trying to form a Tao heart for his 4 subordinates: wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. Only the Tao of fire remained intact. Even after countless years, he still couldn't take that final step. Previously, he'd believed that transcendence required mastery of all Taos. Otherwise, the 5 elements Great Emperor wouldn't have needed to destroy the 5 element. That's what Zhou Wu had always believed, and he'd worked hard towards mastery. However, he'd been trapped here for far too long. His Tao heart for the Tao of fire hadn't solidified, and he'd once been disheartened. But now that Yi Zichen had mentioned a method of transcendence, it was as if he'd opened up a new path for him. It should be very difficult for me to master the Tao of fire, but the method of transcendence he spoke of is indeed an opportunity for me. I have to give it a try. Chapter 1368. No chance. In front of the thatched hut, the God Emperor and the Divine Arbiter gave some orders. When the God Emperor returned, the Divine Arbiter bowed and said, "Leave everything to me." Then, she transformed into a clone and sat cross-legged in front of the door. It was impossible to tell if it was her true body or her clone, but she quietly melted into the void. Yi Zichen and the others, who'd left earlier, landed in a thicket. Barrier. Xian Ji's lips parted, and a sound wave rippled through the void. As the sound waves shook the void, it also enveloped the area within 100 meters around them. This sound barrier seemed invisible, but if one touched it with their hands, one could clearly feel the surrounding space rippling. "Do you know what you just said?" That was the first thing she'd said since leaving the thatched hut. Her gaze was solemn, and her eyes brimmed with reproach and deep confusion. Even as she sat at the stone table, she'd been terrified. Even with her temperament, she almost couldn't help but interrupt him. Yi Zichen, who'd been in the middle of touching the barrier, retracted his hand. When he saw her solemn expression, he smiled. "If the God Emperor wants to know, I'll tell him. It's that simple." "Is there something wrong with your brain?" Xian Ji glared at him and rapped him on the head. "He asked you, so you had to tell him. What did I tell you before we left? I told you to keep your composure when facing Zhou Wu. But what were you doing just now? You were such a coward from start to finish. You're an embarrassment to your mother." Yi Zichen turned his head away, refusing to look at her. Xian Ji was truly furious. She naturally knew how oppressive Zhou Wu's aura was. Zhou Wu's expression changed. Even she felt her heart skip a beat. But look at Yi Zichen's behavior just now. He'd been cowering like a coward. From start to finish, he'd answered everything she asked. Based on her impression of him, he wasn't like that at all. Yi Zichen hadn't expected her to be so angry. He didn't dare disturb her. After a long time, Xian Ji turned back. "Was what you told Zhou Wu true?" "Of course it was true. I didn't lie at all. If you don't believe me, ask Jingwan. She was there when Han Nan told me all this." "Is the transcendence you speak of also true?" asked Xian Ji. "Of course," Yi Zichen nodded. This honest reply angered Xian Ji so much that her fingers trembled uncontrollably. She couldn't say anything for a long time. She stared straight at Yi Zichen for a long time, then walked to his side, held his head with both hands, and looked at him a few times. "Are you scared out of your wits? Is your brain filled with paste? How dare you say that? Zhou Wu is our God Emperor and the hope of our God race. He wants to know why I didn't tell him. Auntie, aren't you also a subordinate of the God Emperor? Why did you have to react like this when I told the God Emperor? Don't tell me you and the Xiao family." Scram! She pushed Yi Zichen's head to the side and glared at him. "I'm not as spineless as Xiao Ting. They want to usurp the throne. No matter how down and out I am, I'd never do something like that." Xian Ji's tone was heavy and serious. Yi Zichen had never doubted that she'd work with the demons. He'd only said that as a joke. He hadn't expected her reaction to be so intense. As he considered whether or not he should explain himself, she continued. "In truth, Zhou Wu and I aren't as close as outsiders think we are. I'm a fox, an ordinary fox. Everyone in the three realms knows this. The only reason I can work for the God race is because he helped me once in the past. I wanted to repay him, so he let me stay here for 1,000 years. Now that 1,000 years have long since passed, we don't owe each other anything. I'm still here simply because I don't want to part with my followers." A cool breeze blew through the forest, accompanied by the fragrance of fresh grass. Xian Ji sighed, then looked at Yi Zichen in disappointment. "You really shouldn't have said that. If Zhou Wu really transcends, do you think you'll still be alive?" "Why not?" Yi Zichen didn't understand. When he saw Xian Ji's eyes, he couldn't help but arch his brows. "The Yao Ceiling Pagoda? That's right, why didn't Zhou Wu ask about the Yao Ceiling Pagoda when I arrived?" "He didn't need to ask. The divine arbiter already probed it for him. Xianji smiled calmly. Why do you think Zhou Wu didn't show up right away? Instead, he asked us to see the divine arbiter first. On the surface, the divine arbiter is Zhou Wu's trusted aide, but in truth, she's his woman. She's absolutely loyal to Zhou Wu. That's why he sent her to ask him. Some things have the same effect if the divine arbiter asks him, and it's more convenient for her to ask him. I see. Yi Zichen nodded. She already learned everything she wanted to know from the divine arbiter's probing. In other words, they already know you inherited the will of the 5 elements. Do you think you'll be able to survive if he surpasses you? When that happens, never mind me. Even if your mother brought the entire Saint Palace with her, it'd all be for naught, said Xianji. But there's no way for him to transcend. When he heard Xianji's dejected and regretful words, Yi Zichen shrugged helplessly and smiled bitterly. Xianji was stunned. Her eyes brightened, but she was also a bit suspicious. Don't tell me you don't know he has the Emperor Star's celestial fate? If he can transcend with it, why can't he? Did you miss the important point? Am I right? Yi Zichen pressed his lips into a smile, then looked at Xianji and hurriedly repeated the conditions Han Nan had told him about for transcendence. Xianji nodded as she listened. By the end, her eyes were as wide as saucers. In short, he wants to transcend. But he's not fated to do so, snorted Yi Zichen. His expression was just like Han Nan's. He wasn't stupid. He knew Zhou Wu would be his future enemy, yet he'd still told him the method to transcend. Wasn't he out of his mind? Indeed, everything he'd said to Zhou Wu was true. Whether it was the death of the Master of the Stars, the imminent destruction of the outside, or even the method to transcend, there was nothing false about what he'd said. But he'd left out the most important point. If he wanted to transcend, he had the Emperor Star's celestial fate, but he also had to be chosen by the Emperor Star. Neither of these points could be omitted, and Zhou Wu had merely fulfilled one of them. Zhou Wu might be able to break through by following Yi Zichen's instructions, but he'd stolen celestial fate. Without an Emperor Star body, he'd never be able to truly transcend. Transcendence was clearly right in front of him, yet he'd taken it. To him. Chapter 1369. The terrifying power of the God Emperor kill and destroy the heart. For his own selfish desires, the God Emperor had usurped the 5 elements great Emperor's celestial fate, which was why he had become the leader of the God race. Since Yi Zichen had inherited the 5 elements great Emperor's will, it would be far too boring to simply kill the God Emperor and take back his celestial fate. He wanted Zhou Wu to see hope, but that hope was forever just a step away from him. And in the end, make him despair. This kind of big ups and downs might be more interesting. Xianji stared at Yi Zichen in a daze. His killing blow was simply too vicious. She didn't know why, but she found it doubly exciting. However, in the midst of her excitement, her expression changed. She walked up to Yi Zichen aggressively and knocked him on the head. Yi Zichen, who'd been lost in thought for a moment, was struck dumb. He rubbed his head and stared blankly at her. This blow wasn't light. He felt a bump on his head from Xianji's blow. What? Is it fun to play with your concubine? Xianji crossed her arms and furrowed her brows. Since you already had a plan, why didn't you tell me directly? You caused me to be unreasonable for half a day. When you saw that I was also kept in the dark, you must have felt pretty good, right? Not to mention, just now, when Yi Zichen saw Xianji's expression, he was secretly pleased. Who was Xianji? Lady Providence, who could pry into the workings of the heavens. There was probably nothing in the entire 3 realms that she couldn't divine. No matter what she encountered, she seemed to know everything clearly. However, she was completely kept in the dark just now. Yi Zichen naturally felt great about that. However, after taking her punch, Yi Zichen didn't feel good at all. There was only pain. He rubbed his head resentfully, not daring to talk back to Xianji. Pu Jingwan was by his side, and Pu Jingwan was on good terms with Xianji. If Xianji got angry and decided to beat him up, given Pu Jingwan's personality, she would definitely watch from the sidelines. It would not be worth it to be beaten up for nothing. I'm confiscating the armor Zhou Wu gave you. Take it as compensation for tricking me, said Xianji, glaring at him. I don't. Yi Zichen panicked. As a god emperor, Zhou Wu's weapon would at least be a divine weapon. Although he now had a divine artifact battle armor, who would complain about having more divine artifacts? Even if he couldn't wear it himself, he could give it to his brothers to ensure their safety. Otherwise, he could sell it at an auction. It would definitely fetch a good price. Why was he giving it to Xianji for no reason? You want to be beaten? Xianji clenched her fist. Yi Zichen immediately scratched his head and gave up. Wasn't it just a divine artifact battle armor? When the time came, the outer realms would send 100 sets over. When she saw that Yi Zichen didn't dare resist, she smiled in satisfaction. The materials used for that set of divine armor were pretty good. When the time came, it would definitely sell for a good price. It was also a good choice to keep it as a collection. After obtaining a set of divine armor, she remembered that the God Emperor had given her several bottles of pills of fortune. Once Yi Zichen's resources from the outside arrived, he'd have to give her a few more bottles as well. Over time, he had earned quite a lot. Xianji was in a great mood. She swung her arms a few times, then squinted her eyes at Yi Zichen. By the way, do you still remember what I said before? What are you referring to? Yi Zichen complained. The things I told the Divine Arbiter, said Xianji. Her juniors? As expected, you really did say that just for me to hear. At the time, Yi Zichen didn't think there was any need for her to go into so much detail. Now that he heard it, it really was the case. I didn't say it for you to hear. Do you think I'm bored? My relationship with her is as bad as hell. Praising her juniors, heh heh. Xianji shrugged and snorted. Let me tell you, the Divine Arbiter is absolutely loyal to Zhou Wu, and so are her clansmen. But you don't need to worry too much. Although she has a whole bunch of divine generals among her juniors, you don't need to worry too much about them. The only one you need to worry about is Jing Hua, whom I mentioned earlier. Yi Zichen had an impression of his nephew, the one who could fight Shui Yang head-on. That guy can be considered a monster. He's only been alive for 300 years, yet he's already an emperor. Not even the emperors of the 8 divine mountains' holy lands can necessarily suppress him. If he's that much of a monster, then you... Xianji chuckled. The arrogance in her eyes said what she wanted to say. You need to pay attention to this monster. Also, I have to tell you that the Divine Arbiter's clan has quite a few old-timers. They're all at the same cultivation level as the Divine Arbiter, and they have no fewer than 100 divine generals. Furthermore, they're all absolutely loyal to the God Emperor. They have no fewer than 5 clans on par with the Divine Arbiter's clan. Yi Zichen fell silent. It was as if he'd been struck by a halo of silence. His eyes glazed over as he listened to Xianji reveal the God Emperor's secrets. No fewer than 5. All of them were on the same level as the Divine Arbiter's clan. In other words, Zhou Wu had at least 6 divine mountains holy lands backing him. Was this really? He'd never heard of such a thing. The God Emperor personally raised these clans after ascending to the throne. As for how he raised them, I tried divining it, but I couldn't figure it out. That's all I could figure out, said Xianji. Yi Zichen scratched his head. Only now did he understand what Han Nan had said. Enough? He absolutely knew about the God Emperor's hidden faction, which was why he'd been surprised Yi Zichen only wanted so few people. At the time, Yi Zichen had assumed that 20 rulers would be enough to flatten the God race. But now, enough my ass. Even if he had 10 times as many, he wouldn't dare say it was enough. No. When the outsiders sent people over to hand over resources, he had to negotiate with them first. they'd send him more elite troops. Otherwise, a colossus like the God Emperor would be too difficult to deal with. The Yao Emperor and Demon Emperor could stand toe to toe with the God Emperor. Was this all they had? Absolutely not. They definitely secretly raised elite troops as well. Based on the God Emperor's standards, Yi Zichen feared he'd need at least 1,000 rulers to gain an advantage in numbers. Auntie, do you know what the God Emperor's clans are surnamed? I'll have to pay more attention when the time comes. I don't know. All I know is that the Divine Arbiter's surname is Shen. I don't know anything else. Xianji shook her head. Shen. What an arrogant surname. Although Xianji didn't know the surnames of the other hidden clans, which made him somewhat vexed, perhaps knowing the Divine Arbiter's clan was a good thing. In the future, if he ran into anyone with the surname Shen, he'd have to pay close attention. Especially that freak, Jing Hua. Chapter 1370. Grow suspicious. By the time Yi Zichen and the others returned to Heavenly God City, the sky was already filled with stars. The dazzling starlight was dazzling, and every home was brightly lit. Fire-red lanterns hung from the shops along the street. Even standing outside the city, they could hear the bustle of the taverns inside. But even in this peaceful, tranquil night, Heavenly God City's defenses were at their highest. There were at least 10 guards standing guard around the tower in front of the city gate. Below the city gate, there were also 6 small teams of 10 patrolling the vicinity of the city. The squad's overall strength had gone from being a Sky Supreme to a Diviner. At first, the squad consisted entirely of Earth Supremes, but now there were at least 4 Sky Supremes. It's already this bad? Yi Zichen scanned the sky outside the city gates with his divine sense. When he sensed the city's defenses, he couldn't help but click his tongue. Back when he'd followed Skyspan Academy's team here, the defenses hadn't reached this level yet. These are extraordinary times. It's good to be cautious, said Xianji calmly. She'd been the one to set up Heavenly God City's defenses. Since the God Emperor wasn't in the capital, he'd left full authority over the city to her. Having been entrusted with such a heavy responsibility, she naturally couldn't disappoint Zhou Wu. Although she'd already repaid all her debts to him, she'd lived with the God Realm for 10,000 years. She couldn't just leave things as they were. Such a large-scale operation would consume more and more of the city's resources by the day. However, the relationship between the God, Yao, and demon races was ambiguous, and they couldn't afford to let down their guard. In order to ensure the city's safety, she naturally had to strengthen its defenses. It wasn't just Heavenly God City. Every other city on the central Divine Mountain was on red alert. There was nothing wrong with taking preventive measures. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy footsteps came from afar, followed by the clanging of weapons and armor. Yi Zichen looked down and saw that it was a squad of soldiers patrolling the city's outskirts. Heavenly God City prohibits flying. Friends, come down quickly. That way, it'll be easier for you and easier for us. For some reason, Yi Zichen found this voice somewhat familiar. As Xianji descended from the sky, the moment the soldiers saw her, they knelt to the ground. Your Highness. At that moment, Yi Zichen saw the face of the guard captain clearly. No wonder he looked so familiar. This was the captain of the guards who had stopped him and Pu Jingwan. When he looked at the members behind him, they were no longer the ones he had met before. It couldn't have been them. Although Pu Jingwan hadn't used her full strength, she was still a top-notch expert amongst the rulers. Those guards were only Sky Supremes. They'd be bedridden for at least half a month after taking a single blow from her. It's you. It was clear that Xianji also had an impression of this guard captain. The pills of fortune have already been sent out. They didn't embezzle them, did they? The other members all looked envious. They all knew that Xianji had given away a bottle of good fortune pills today. This kind of pill was something that could only be encountered by chance. Many people from the city defense department were annoyed at their bad luck. If only they had encountered such a good thing. Even if he was beaten up, he might be able to obtain the good fortune pill. As long as he wasn't beaten to death, everything was fine. How would this subordinate dare? The captain of the guards smiled bitterly. After sending those brothers back, I distributed all the elixirs. How are things with the Wang family? Asked Xianji. She didn't care too much about the ordinary guards. She cared more about the Wang family's attitude. Although the Wang family wasn't a peak-level family clan in Heavenly God City, they were still an aristocratic family with some influence. Lady Providence bestowed 2 good fortune pills. The Wang family is naturally moved to tears. Furthermore, this subordinate heard that the Divine Arbiter went to the Wang family recently to appease them. I doubt the Wang family will. Suddenly, the guard captain recalled what Xianji had told him earlier. He absolutely couldn't let the God Emperor find out about this. Instantly, his face turned incomparably pale, and his back was drenched in cold sweat. Lady Providence, No need to say more. Xianji cut him off. The guard captain's expression grew even more unsightly. Even though he was already a diviner, his hands, which held his helmet, began to tremble. His hair was completely soaked in sweat, and beads of sweat dripped down his nose and onto the ground. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was sweating like crazy. All right, I don't mean to blame you. Xianji glanced at him coolly. I know the God Emperor knows about this. We just returned from his place. Xianji believed that after accepting her pills, the guard captain would do everything in his power to keep the news under wrap. Although he was only a small captain, he still had some power. If he wanted to keep the news under wraps, there was an 80% chance he could do it. But the God Emperor still knew about this. It was highly likely that he had planted spies in the city. He'd clearly given management of the Divine Mountains to Xianji, but now he'd planted spies in the city. From this, it was clear that Zhou Wu didn't trust Xianji as much as he said he did. What concerned her even more was the Divine Arbiter. She'd just said she'd send her, but she hadn't expected them to come so soon. Zhou Wu. It seemed he was beginning to suspect her too. She waved a hand irritably at the guard captain and said, "Thank you for your hard work. Continue to stand guard." As she spoke, she turned to walk into the city. Unexpectedly, the captain of the guards stopped her. Under her suspicious gaze, the guard captain stretched out his hand and said meticulously, "Lady Providence, please show me your identity card." On the way into the city, Xianji's expression was unsightly. She was the mighty head of the profound pavilion, yet someone had stopped her and forced her to show her identity card. When she thought about it that way, what happened to him and Pu Jingwan made sense. That adorable guard captain wasn't trying to make trouble for them. He really was meticulous and meticulous. Is there a need for that? Is there a problem with that? Yi Zichen tried to console her. Just now, he checked your identity card. I don't think you should blame him. Instead, you should reward him. These are extraordinary times, and you need to be on your guard. Xianji glanced at him coolly, a strange smile flashing across her face. She approached him. Yi Zichen was just about to say something when he saw a hand move so fast, he couldn't even see it. It smacked him on the head. I don't need you to tell me that. If you can think of it, how could I, your aunt, not think of it? My expression turned ugly because of a few of his team members. When he had asked me to show my crystal card, a few of his team members had clearly shown terrified expressions. It's obvious that if it were them, they would have let me in right away. What if a Yao or demon disguised themselves as me and snuck into the city? Chapter 1371. What deeper meaning? Xianji's tone was solemn, and she didn't seem to be lying. It didn't matter if the God Emperor trusted her or not. So long as Heavenly God City was under her control, she absolutely couldn't allow anything to happen to it. She truly felt that the guards hadn't performed well. If they let the important figures of the God race pass unconditionally when they saw them, what would happen if one day, A demon or a monster disguised as a high-ranking member of the god race entered Heavenly God City and swaggered on the streets without being suspected. This investigation is to find out who they are, isn't it? Asked Pu Jingwan suddenly. That's right, said Xianji. But I can still sense a lot of demons in this city. If you were worried about demons entering the city, why would you let so many demons in? If you weren't worried about them entering, then what's the point of your investigation? Asked Pu Jingwan. This was a contradiction. Anyone who entered the city or used a transportation formation to enter had to undergo an identity check. The purpose of the check was to find out if they were Yao or demons. But even if they were found out, the demon race and Yao race could still walk around the city as they pleased. If Yao and demons disguised themselves as gods, they wouldn't be found. In the end, they'd enter the city. If they were found, they'd still enter the city. Without disguises, they'd still enter the city. In any case, they'd still enter the city. What was the point of this investigation? It was pointless. In response to Pu Jingwan's doubts, Xianji smiled and explained. The city is naturally for Yao and demons to enter. We're currently in the middle of the Battle of Geniuses, so they can use the excuse of spectating to enter the city. We gods can't refuse. But there's still a huge difference between finding them and not finding them. If we find them, we'll have them gather in the southern part of the city and send people to monitor them day and night. When they go out, we'll also have god race experts monitor them one-on-one. That way, everything about them will be exposed to us. But if they disguise themselves as gods and enter the city, we'll treat them as if they're gods and won't imprison them. If they suddenly attack, we won't be able to react in time. Yi Zichen couldn't help but nod. Don't be fooled by what Xianji had just said. It sounded like a waste of manpower. The investigation procedures were complicated and required vast amounts of manpower and resources. That was especially true for one-on-one investigations. However, doing so would ensure that nothing would go wrong. At this time, the gates of the divine race were wide open. What they needed to do at this time was to ensure absolute safety. They could not afford any accident. As for the manpower and resources consumed, it was all worth it as long as they could get through the Battle of Geniuses. In truth, Xianji hadn't completely revealed everything yet. Her strategy just now was only for Sky Supremes and Earth Supremes. As long as they reached the celestial being level, they would have other ways to manage them. However, this was a matter of city defense, so there was no need for her to explain things so clearly to Yi Zichen. She smiled at Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan, then pursed her lips and arched her brows. What do you two want? Do you want to go back with me and rest, or do you want to go to the Divine Martial School? With that, she turned to Yi Zichen. I feel like it's better for you to go to my place. It doesn't really matter whether you go to Shenwu or not. Why do you say that? Asked Yi Zichen. Do I still need to explain? The reason for the Battle of Geniuses was just an excuse for the demon race and the monster race to enter and leave the god race's territory at will. They've already achieved their goal. Now, all they have to do is plant the seeds of war within the god race. You can't really be so stupid as to think this is a competition to rank the geniuses of the three realms, right? I don't think you're that brainless. Xianji pursed her lips and shrugged. This was something the upper echelons of the god, Yao, and demon realms, as well as the participants of the Battle of Geniuses, all knew. The Battle of Geniuses was nothing more than a show. Everyone had a tacit understanding of its true purpose. Pu Jingwan was from the outside, so she didn't understand any of this. All she knew was that she was here on a protection mission, and that her employer, Han Nan, had asked her to protect Yi Zichen. It didn't matter where she lived. Yi Zichen was the one who made the decision. She tilted her head and saw Yi Zichen pursing his lips in thought. I'd better go straight to Shenwu. Even though Xianji had been so blunt, Yi Zichen still made up his mind. He naturally knew the purpose of the Battle of Geniuses, but that was precisely why he had to go. There was no way the demons and Yao hadn't anticipated that the god race would keep an eye on them during the Battle of Geniuses. Most of the people who came later wouldn't be able to pull any trick. In that case, who would be the easiest target? The participants of the Battle of Geniuses, of course. Up to you. In the face of Yi Zichen's refusal, Xianji didn't insist. She let him make his choice. Auntie. At that moment, Yi Zichen suddenly spoke up. Xianji looked in his direction and saw that his brows were furrowed deeply as he spoke. Why did Zhou Wu want to become sworn brothers with me? Is there some deeper meaning to this? Well, on the way back, Xianji had thought about it. God Emperor Zhou Wu's declaration of brotherhood was too sudden, but before long, he said it was just a joke. Even with Xianji's exquisite heart, she couldn't guess what he was thinking. In the end, she simply said, "How should I know? You're asking me, but who am I supposed to ask? Aren't you good at divination? Do you think I don't need money?" Xianji rolled her eyes at Yi Zichen. She didn't quite know what to say. Zhou Wu is the God Emperor, after all. Do you think he's an ordinary commoner? Right, your forging of Soul Pearl Yuan is almost complete. Once it's done, I'll send you a message. Bye. With that, Xianji, who had been standing on the street, disappeared. Your auntie left, said Pu Jingwan when she saw that Yi Zichen still hadn't moved. I know, said Yi Zichen without even looking up. He was still thinking about the God Emperor's offer to become sworn brothers with him. Why exactly? Why would the God Emperor say something like that for no apparent reason, then say it was just a joke? Yi Zichen couldn't figure out why the God Emperor would say something like that, or what his intentions were. This made him feel terrible. Yi Zichen wasn't the type of person who liked too many unknowns, especially when it came to becoming sworn brothers with the God Emperor. He felt even more uneasy. At that moment, Pu Jingwan interrupted Yi Zichen's train of thought and blurted out a question. Is there going to be a war? Probably. Yi Zichen was still mulling over the God Emperor's intentions, so he didn't think too much about it. That's great. To his surprise, Pu Jingwan clapped her hands excitedly. A moment later, Yi Zichen saw a pair of fair hands. Chapter 1372. Monster. It was hard to believe that there was such a rule in the Outer Realm's bodyguard regulations. If you participate in a large-scale war, you will receive an additional commission based on the scale of the war. Yi Zichen clenched the Bounty Association's manual Pu Jingwan had given him. When he saw what she'd pointed out, his face filled with astonishment. What the hell is this thing for? Wasn't the job of a bodyguard to protect the safety of the employer? Since it was to protect the employer, they would definitely be involved in a fight. Otherwise, why would they hire bodyguards? Too much money to burn. Suddenly coming up with something like this, wasn't this acting shamelessly? Don't look at me like that. Our Bounty Association is very fair. If it's a small fight, we don't need to pay more. It clearly states that it's a war. A war and a small-scale fight are two different things. I'm afraid you're going to get involved in a large-scale war. The death rate in a large-scale war is very high. Bounty agents are all rare talent. Their lives are expensive, so it's necessary to increase their pay. When she saw Yi Zichen's expression, Pu Jingwan puffed out her chest and puffed up her chest. It also says that during the mission, the hired must be absolutely respectful to the employer, and must not. Yi Zichen flipped to the front of the Code of Conduct and prepared to read the first line. Unexpectedly, Pu Jingwan snatched the booklet back and wrinkled her nose. Once you reach the level of a bounty master, you can ignore the previous clauses. There's something like that? Yi Zichen was shocked. Of course I do. Anyway, hurry up and give me more money. If you don't, I have the right to back out of the mission, and I won't give you back the money, said Pu Jingwan, looking up at him. In the past, Yi Zichen wouldn't have hesitated to let her go. But after witnessing God Emperor Zhou Wu's astonishing might, he was determined to keep someone as powerful as Pu Jingwan here, no matter what. No problem. I'll get Han Nan to pay you double after the mission. I want it now. Then you are making things difficult for me. Yi Zichen rolled his eyes, then prepared to head towards the Divine Martial Academy. Pu Jingwan didn't give up, and just as they passed by a tavern, Brother Yi. Jiang Yong recognized Yi Zichen at a glance and laughed heartily as he walked out of the tavern to greet him. Yi Zichen stopped in his tracks. When he saw that it was Jiang Yong, he smiled and walked up to him. Why are you here? Drinking with the brothers in the group, Brother Yi is. I was just about to go to the Divine Martial Academy to see Shui Mo and the others. Little did they know, when Yi Zichen mentioned Shui Mo, Jiang Yong's eyes flashed for a moment. After an instant, he put his hand on Yi Zichen's shoulder and laughed. There's no hurry. Let's go in and have a drink. Before Yi Zichen could say anything, Jiang Yong dragged him inside. As soon as he entered the tavern, he saw that almost everyone on the first floor was from Skyspan Academy. The Aspirations Society, the Appearance Association, and the Navigators. Yi Zichen even saw the Grizzly Bears, but he didn't see Anti-Upheaval or Jiang Wei. With Jiang Wei's proud and aloof personality, it wasn't strange that he didn't attend such occasions. But Anti-Upheaval's group, to say nothing of the others, Li Hu was definitely there. Hey, look who's here! Jiang Yong stood at the door and shouted at the top of his lungs. All the students in the tavern looked over, and when they saw Yi Zichen, they all called him Platoon Leader Yi. Jiang Yong's table mates, Murong Shui, the Su brothers, Pang Zheng, and Di Long all walked up to greet him. Brother Yi! Brother Zichen! Murong Shui and the Su brothers were on good terms with Yi Zichen to begin with, so they greeted him with smiles. Pang Zheng and Di Long, on the other hand, were visibly distressed. Their relationship with Yi Zichen had always been tense, but after learning of his shocking background, they'd both set aside their enmity towards him. They couldn't be enemies. Given Yi Zichen's background, they'd have to be out of their minds to be enemies with him. Brother Yi. Pang Zheng's gaze flickered back and forth as he grit his teeth and lifted a cup of wine. It was my fault for opposing you at every turn. I hope you can let bygones be bygones. He raised his head and downed the wine in his cup. Di Long, who was beside him, also raised his cup and downed the wine. Yi Zichen frowned at them, then picked up a gourd of wine and drained it in one gulp. When they saw this, Pang Zheng and Di Long's frowns relaxed. The Su brothers laughed heartily. All right. We're all from the same academy, so it's inevitable that there'll be conflicts between societies. Let's drink this wine and let bygones be bygones. From now on, let's help each other out and hang out more often. Jiang Yong gave him a thumbs up and laughed. I knew Brother Yi wasn't the stingy sort. Drink up. How refreshing. All right, don't just stand there. Sit down. Waiter, bring us 2 more sets of chopsticks. Yi Zichen was pressed onto the chair forcefully as well. Jiang Yong personally brought out a chair and had Pu Jingwan sit down. Yi Zichen sat down, his brows still furrowed. Pang Zheng and Di Long had most likely given in because Xian Ji had told them about his background. He could understand that. He had no desire to oppose them. Furthermore, since Murong Shui and the others were sitting at the same table, it was clear they'd let bygones be bygones. If he didn't let them go, there'd be no point. So, he drank the wine. But what he cared about was why, of all the participants in the Battle of Geniuses, no one from Anti-Upheaval was here. Brother Yi, drink up. Jiang Yong raised his glass and leaned over. Yi Zichen clinked glasses with him and drained it in one gulp. Then he furrowed his brows and said, What's going on? You've all come out, but why don't I see anyone from Anti-Upheaval? Why aren't they here? The other student societies in the tavern froze, and the others at the table paused as well. Murong Shui giggled and explained, What's going on? Anti-Upheaval just finished a competition. You're all exhausted, so you're resting. Is that so? Yi Zichen nodded. Murong Shui poured herself a glass as well. Brother Zichen, let's have a drink as well. All right. Everyone at the table acted as if they wanted to get him drunk. They toasted him over and over again. It wasn't just his table, the others did the same. They took turns toasting him. Yi Zichen didn't refuse. He drank one glass after another, but he was a bit hesitant. He could understand them toasting him. After all, Xianji had suddenly exposed his background. He deserved a toast. But there was no end to the toasts. Even Murong Shui toasted him 10 times. This was strange. Furthermore, he wasn't satisfied with Murong Shui's explanation of anti-upheaval. Tired. If it were anyone else, he might have believed them, but Li Hu. He was more energetic than anyone else. Besides, he'd come out to drink. Even if he died of exhaustion, he'd crawl over. Yi Zichen couldn't understand what they were doing. Chapter 1373. The great sage had gone mad. There was definitely something fishy going on. He knew Li Hu's personality all too well. How could he not come to a drinking event like this? Then there were the people from the other student societies in the tavern. Everyone who'd signed up for the Battle of Geniuses was here. If they kept drinking like this, wouldn't they need to participate? Furthermore, Yi Zichen had the vague feeling that Murong Shui and the others were trying to make him stay. Brother Yi, let's drink. Pang Jing raised his cup, then drained it in one gulp before Yi Zichen could say anything. He tipped his cup over and gestured for Yi Zichen to drink as well. Murong Shui was also pouring wine for him, pushing him to have a drink as well. This was too strange. He naturally drank, but he sent Shui Mo a message from under the table. From the moment Yi Zichen stepped into the tavern, he became the absolute center of attention. There was an endless stream of people toasting him, and glass after glass was refilled. Yi Zichen calmly placed his hand on the table. Pu Jingwan, who was sitting beside him, tugged at his hand. Flirting? Of course not. He was using this method to get Pu Jingwan to help him dispel his drunkenness. The people in the tavern weren't just offering him ordinary alcohol. It was called immortal intoxication. Even experts at the celestial being realm would feel tipsy after drinking a certain amount of alcohol. As soon as the alcohol entered his stomach, he used his divine power to dispel it, but there were too many people toasting him. He had no choice but to ask Pu Jingwan for help. It feels like you're not that popular. Everyone's trying to get you drunk. Pu Jingwan's divine sense transmission rang out in his sea of consciousness. Yi Zichen didn't respond. He just continued drinking. You can't do this. Their goal is to get you drunk at all costs. You have to give them some face, right? Besides, so many people are toasting you. If you stay sober, they'll get suspicious. Yi Zichen's hand stiffened. He glanced at Pu Jingwan, then at the other students in the tavern. They were all fighting over each other, but their faces were still flushed with drunkenness. However, Yi Zichen, who'd been toasted in turn, remained clear-headed. This was indeed too suspicious. She was right. Yi Zichen let go of Murong Shui, raised his glass, and downed it. Jiang Yong didn't even give him a chance to catch his breath as he wobbled over with a cup of wine in hand. Brother Yi, you have a good alcohol tolerance. Let's have another cup. You guys can let me go, please. Even a celestial being would get drunk. If I keep drinking like this, I'm going to pass out. Yi Zichen smiled and pushed down Jiang Yong's glass. That's about enough. Let's drink some more later. I really can't hold my liquor, so I'm going back. Don't. Without giving Yi Zichen a chance to speak, Jiang Yong put his arm around his shoulders and laughed. Let's not go home until we're drunk. Besides, if you go back now, you'll disturb their news, and your female companion won't have a place to stay. Let's drink here. Even if you're really drunk, we can arrange for you to stay here. I'll go back after I sober up. There won't be any delays. The other people at the table also chimed in. Yi Zichen frowned slightly. Buzz, the phone in his pocket, suddenly vibrated. Yi Zichen had been waiting for Shui Mo's message this entire time, but instead of a jade slip, his phone rang. He took his phone out of his pocket. When Jiang Yong and the others saw that Yi Zichen had business to attend to, they retreated to their seat. However, if he put down his phone, his drink would be delivered to him. He opened his social media app and saw that Yang Jian's message was at the top. "Brother, we're requesting backup." There were 3 exclamation marks. From this, it was clear just how urgent Yang Jian's message had been. He'd most likely gone to the Yao realm with the great sage to seek out Fairy Zixia. For him to send such an urgent message now, Yi Zichen's heart trembled. "What is it?" As soon as he sent the message, Yang Jian's chat window showed that he was typing something. "The monkey's gone crazy." Yang Jian looked behind him and typed out another message. Once again, he ended with an exclamation mark. Before Yi Zichen could reply, a 10-second video appeared. Yi Zichen clicked on it. Boom, boom, boom. A deafening explosion resounded through the air. All the students in the tavern instinctively looked in Yi Zichen's direction. Pu Jingwan waved a finger, and a barrier appeared between the two of them. In the video, countless rocks fell from the sky. The great sage stood in the sky, his expression savage. His Rui Jingu Bang was hundreds of meters long, and its afterimages swept across the mountain range like a broom. Rocks flew everywhere. Within a radius of 1,000 miles, there were crushed rocks and ancient trees that had been snapped in half. The entire video was a mess. At the end of the video, Yi Zichen even heard Yang Jian mutter, "He's gone crazy. He's gone crazy." The video was only 10 seconds long, but it was enough to show that the great sage's emotions were truly unstable. Below the video was a message from Yang Jian. "See? It looks like the monkey's gone berserk. He's been venting for almost an hour now. Hurry up and get over here. Bring Pu Jingwan over too. I can't control him right now." "You can't control him?" Yi Zichen was stunned. After all, Yang Jian could instantly kill even a demon god. Back in the heavenly court, the great sage truly was the victorious fighting Buddha. Suppressing Yang Jian was no problem at all. But this was the upper realm of the gods, Yao, and demon realms. The great sage had only just become a diviner. How could Yang Jian not be able to handle him? "Now's not the time to explain. Hurry up and get over here. If you're any later, you'll have to come collect my corpse." Coordinates. A map suddenly appeared on the screen. At the same time, Yi Zichen replied. "Hold on." When Yang Jian saw the message, he gulped, then put his phone back in his pocket. At that moment, he was stealthily hiding in a crack in a boulder, watching the raging monkey in the sky. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and muttered, "What the hell is going on? What the hell is going on?" Yang Jian's eyes narrowed. In truth, he didn't know what was going on either. He'd brought the great sage to Zixia, but the monkey had gone in on his own. Yang Jian had simply waited outside for news. An hour later, the monkey emerged. At the time, he'd behaved normally, but after leaving and coming here, he seemed to have gone mad. His aura skyrocketed, and even Yang Jian found it hard to keep him in check. What's going on? Could it be that he broke up with someone, got rejected, or... A bad premonition suddenly popped into Yang Jian's mind. But if that was really the case, then the great sage's madness made sense. Chapter 1374. The truth: Yang Jian wasn't sure if the great sage had been cuckolded or not. Everything was just his conjecture. Furthermore, with his usual conflicts with the great sage, he really didn't think in a good way. Regardless of the reason for his madness, he was actually alone. If he really wanted to suppress the great sage, he would naturally have a chance. However, he would definitely injure the monkey due to his lack of control over his strength. He definitely hated the monkey, but Yang Jian didn't want to hurt him. All he could do now was wait for Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan to arrive. If he and Pu Jingwan joined forces, their chances of suppressing the great sage would be even higher. At that time, regardless of whether he was cuckolded or because of other reasons, he would slowly console himself. When Yi Zichen found out that Yang Jian's situation was urgent, He put his phone back into his pocket with a solemn expression. What's wrong? The video I saw just now seemed to be your friend getting angry. Let's head to the Yao realm right now, said Yi Zichen solemnly. Pu Jingwan nodded. Then are we just going to ignore them? Back in the tavern, Murong Shui and the others had been acting very strangely. He didn't understand why Anti-Upheaval's brothers hadn't come. However, Yi Zichen was keenly aware that, given Murong Shui's relationship with Shui Mo, they weren't trying to isolate Anti-Upheaval, target them, or harm them. If they really wanted to do that, they wouldn't have dragged him here to drink. Perhaps he really was just overthinking things. Perhaps these people just wanted to drink with him. Perhaps Anti-Upheaval's brothers really were tired and had gone to rest. It was entirely possible. It wasn't just Pang Zheng and Di Long. Murong Shui and Jiang Yong were there as well. The two of them would never harm Shui Mo. For some reason, Yi Zichen thought of a possibility. After mulling it over for a while, Yi Zichen decided that the Great Sage's situation was more urgent. At the very least, the Great Sage's reaction was more direct. Whatever, Pu Jingwan said, her face dark. Pu Jingwan removed the restrictions around them. They didn't know why, but when they saw Yi Zichen's solemn expression, their faces darkened as well. Murong Shui asked tentatively as soon as the restriction disappeared. Brother Zichen, did something happen? Are you guys hiding something from me? Asked Yi Zichen. How could that be? We're brothers. How could we possibly hide anything from you? Jiang Yong laughed. We just saw that you didn't look too good and wanted to show some concern. You guys are weird. Yi Zichen squinted his eyes, but a faint light still shone through them. Those who were stared at by this gaze subconsciously turned their heads away. Some were minding their own business, and some were staring at the ceiling and floor of the tavern. In short, they looked very uncomfortable. As expected. When he saw their expressions, Yi Zichen smiled calmly. Our anti-upheaval society was eliminated, right? But your society's advanced, so we're here to celebrate. Sorry to invite Shui Mo and the others. Everyone's expressions changed. Jiang Yong smiled bitterly and nodded. Yes, Brother Yi is indeed an understanding person. As expected, that was a possibility that Yi Zichen suddenly thought of. There naturally had to be a winner in this sort of battle of geniuses. After losing him, Anti-Upheaval's overall strength was far inferior to the other student societies. In a battle of geniuses like this, there was a high chance they'd be eliminated. Even Li, who wouldn't be so thick-skinned as to attend a celebratory banquet for the victors. Haha, look at you guys. Did you have to go so far behind my back for something so trivial? You even got me drunk and didn't want me to go back? You're worried that if I find out, I'll hug them and cry. Yi Zichen couldn't help but shake his head and laugh bitterly. Don't take it to heart. Our anti-upheaval really is the weakest of all the student societies, and I wasn't there either. It's all my fault. When you go back, help me comfort Shui Mo and the others. Don't take it too seriously. They were eliminated, but you guys are still here, right? Brother Yi, you're not going back? Asked Peng Jing. I can't. I have to hurry to the Yao realm. I'm on my way right now. You guys just keep drinking and don't worry about me. When you get back, you have to comfort them for me, especially Murong Shui. You're on good terms with Shui Mo, so help her talk some sense into it. When I get back, I'll make it up to them. With that, he glanced meaningfully at Pu Jingwan, and the two of them vanished from the tavern like a gust of wind. The group leaders in the tavern walked to the door and watched as the two of them left. Then, they sighed and returned to their seat. We're pretty lucky, aren't we? Even if we got him drunk, we'd at most delay him for a few days. He suddenly has to go to the Yao realm, and it'll take him at least half a month to go back and forth, said Di Long, rubbing his wineglass. That's right. Pang Jing nodded. At least we don't have to waste any more time in this tavern, sighed Su Lei. Had they really come here to celebrate? Of course not. In truth, Yi Zichen didn't know that they'd set up camp in the tavern 3 days ago. They'd stayed here from morning to night, because this was the only way to the Divine Martial School, and they'd set up camp here. All for the sake of stopping Yi Zichen and preventing him from entering the Divine Martial School. Is this really all right? Su Chao had drunk quite a bit of immortal intoxication, and his face was flushed. His eyes brimmed with confusion. Even if we stop him like this, how long can we possibly hold him off? Brother Yi will find out sooner or later. Every minute counts. Every second counts. Given his relationship with Shui Mo, what do you think he'll do if he finds out? Jiang Yong slapped the table and shouted. What's the point of dragging things out like this? He'll find out sooner or later. You don't need to yell at me. I'm just telling you rationally that there's no point in dragging things out. What are you yelling for? Roared Su Chao. What are you two doing? Pang Jing stepped between them. Don't get too worked up. Right now, all we need to do is wait for Shui Mo to wake up. So long as she wakes up, Brother Yi will find out. I think Jiang Yong's right. Every minute we delay gives Shui Mo more time to wake up. Let's stall for as long as we can. It's all my fault. Suddenly, Murong Shui threw her arms around her shoulders and burst into tears. If I'd held on a little longer and met up with Shui Mo, we could have worked together and she wouldn't have ended up like that. Or if I'd been there and sensed danger, I would have told her to forfeit instead of fighting the entire match. It's all my fault, all my fault. Everyone in the tavern fell silent. Jiang Yong pulled her into his arms and comforted her. How is this your fault? If we were strong enough, we wouldn't have just watched Shui Mo suffer like that, and we wouldn't have let that guy leave so arrogantly. Chapter 1375. Yang Jian acts pitiful because of the battle of geniuses. The Yaoan demons had come to Heavenly God City to watch. They deliberately built a two-way space transfer array at the Heavenly God Realm that could lead straight to the end. The God race also turned a blind eye to this. After an hour, Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan arrived in the Yao region. Even though they were in the Yao region, there was still a network signal. It seemed that Zhuomo's network had already extended all the way to Yao territory. What's the situation? Yi Zichen, who was rushing over to Yang Jian's side through a spiritual formation, sent him a message. Not long later, he received a reply. It's not good, but it's not bad either. He's still in a frenzied state, but I'm not injured. Not long after the message was sent, Yang Jian sent another message asking, Where are you? We'll be there soon. Hide well. Yang Jian didn't even need to say anything. Yi Zichen already knew that he was hiding somewhere, paying close attention. They were far too familiar with each other. He'd long since figured out each other's personalities. When he saw Yi Zichen's message, Yang Jian's face reddened. However, he didn't say anything. He simply put his phone in his pocket, stuck his head through a crack in the rock, and looked around. The moonlight was hazy. It was a full moon, and its pure moonlight bathed the land, covering the Yao region in a long silver robe. Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan finally arrived an hour after asking about Yang Jian's situation. What they'd seen in the video was just the tip of the iceberg. When they finally arrived, "That's a bit too vicious, isn't it?" Pu Jingwan crossed her arms and stared at the ruined ancient forest in astonishment. It had been thousands of miles long, but now it was completely ravaged. There were no signs of Yao or wild animals alive. There wasn't even a single bird to be seen. In the distance, deafening roars could be heard from time to time, and violent divine power ripples could be heard. At that moment, a streak of light streaked through the sky and landed in front of them. "Bro, you're finally here." A sobbing voice came out of Yang Jian's mouth, but when he was crying, he vaguely felt that there was a leak in his voice. Yi Zichen was shocked. At that moment, he wasn't hiding properly like he said in the phone. His eyes were bruised and he had lost 2 teeth. The teeth around his mouth were also a little loose, as if they were going to fall off at any time. "You, brother!" Yang Jian reached out and hugged Yi Zichen, then sobbed uncontrollably. Pu Jingwan was already covering her mouth and giggling. Yi Zichen's lips quivered, but he couldn't speak for a long time. Finally, Pu Jingwan reached out and patted his back a few times. After a while, the crying Yang Jian finally calmed down a little. At the same time, Yi Zichen also looked at him, who had panda eyes. How did you become like this? Didn't I tell you to hide properly? He had clearly instructed him to hide and wait for him to come over. In less than an hour, he had been beaten up so badly. In fact, Yang Jian's crying just now was also an act. He did not manage to squeeze out a single tear for a long time. When he was asked why things had turned out this way, his face instantly darkened. It's all because of that damned monkey. Yang Jian cursed viciously, then glared at Yi Zichen. Brother, tell me, do I owe that damned monkey anything? I knew he'd been thinking about Zixia, so I helped him find her residence and brought him here myself. But not only did he not know how to be grateful, he even King beat me up. Look at what he did to me, look at it now. Yang Jian pointed at his panda eyes and the bruises on his arms. He's so heartless. A dog ate his conscience. Woof woof. The howling celestial dog barked, as if rebuking Yi Zichen for calling it a dog. Scram. Just looking at you makes me angry. I was beaten so badly, and all you did was hide in the corner. You didn't even dare let out a fart. Yang Jian kicked the howling celestial dog again. The howling celestial dog whimpered and wagged its tail, but it lay to the side and stopped barking. Why are you venting your anger on the howling celestial dog? Yi Zichen whistled at the howling celestial dog, telling it to lie down. Did the great sage beat you up and down? That's him. Yang Jian glared at him. No way. Yi Zichen was shocked. He knew how strong Yang Jian was, and he also knew how strong the great sage was. Even if the great sage went berserk, there was no way he could beat the ruler-level Yang Jian into this state. Furthermore, judging from his silence, it didn't seem like he'd gained the upper hand. How could you not beat the great sage? I fell for his tricks, Yang Jian tried his best to explain. Don't underestimate that monkey. I sensed a particularly fierce power in his body earlier, but now that he's gone berserk, it's fair to say he's unleashed all of that power. You're saying the great sage is now a ruler? When he saw Yang Jian nod silently, Yi Zichen's shock reached its peak. What on earth was going on? When the great sage left, he'd only just become a diviner. It had only been a few days, but he'd already become a ruler? What's more, Yang Jian couldn't do anything to him. This was a bit too inconceivable. If others found out, especially those experts who'd gone to great lengths to become rulers, or those who'd been stuck at the diviner level for 1,000 years, what would they think? He'd become a ruler just because he'd gone berserk? When had rulers become so cheap? Then why did the great sage hit you? Yi Zichen couldn't quite figure it out, but then he realized the great sage was in a state of madness, so he changed the subject. You said in your message that you couldn't keep the great sage under control, so why did you go to him anyway? Yang Jian coughed awkwardly. Did you really think he wanted to go to the great sage's place? In truth, he'd been hiding in a crack in the rock. Just as he was shaking his head, the great sage had smashed a rock into his head. He was instantly enraged. He had to teach that damned monkey a lesson. In the end, he'd seen it for himself. He'd been beaten, and not lightly, either. But given his personality, could he tell the truth? He definitely couldn't. Why did I go to him anyway? Wasn't it all for his sake? Yang Jian feigned righteousness and cursed. In the middle of his madness, he seemed to be hurting himself. In order to protect him, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Talking about it really pisses me off. Yang Jian was furious. Even Yi Zichen was stunned by his deep sense of righteousness. Was this really the Yang Jian he knew? But when he thought about the great sage and Yang Jian's love-hate relationship, it made sense. It's been hard on you. Has the great sage calmed down yet? Chapter 1376. Pu Jingwan, full of righteousness. Yang Jian's eyes were fixed on Yi Zichen's. His previously dry eyes were now brimming with tears. He'd been beaten, and beaten to such a sorry state. Even now, all Yizichin cared about was the damned monkey's condition. What the hell? He'd acted pitiful for no reason at all. Why are you looking at me like that? Yizichin felt a little uncomfortable under Yang Jian's gaze. How is the great sage doing? Tell me. Bro, you're my bro, right? Yang Jian grabbed him by the shoulder. That's right, said Yizichin. Look at my face. My handsome, envious-looking face. Yang Jian spat out the words with great force, then glared at Yizichin's bruised eyes. That monkey beat me to this state. Why aren't you worried about me? Why are you still thinking about that monkey? No. Didn't you call us here for the great sage? You're doing this to protect him, right? Alright, I know you're worried about the great sage. You've done well. Yizichin laughed and praised Yang Jian. That's good enough, right? How old are you? You still need to be coaxed? You're amazing. The great sage must have cultivated 8 lifetimes worth of good fortune to have a bro like you. Now, can you tell me about the great sage's condition? Yang Jian didn't say anything for a long time. After a while, that monkey's still mad. As he spoke, Yang Jian rolled his eyes. It was clear he was in a bad mood. What should we do now? I suggest we use the cruelest methods possible to teach him a lesson, snorted Yang Jian. In the face of this, Yizichin suddenly doubted the veracity of Yang Jian's words. He'd clearly said he'd been beaten up by the great sage and wanted to get back at him. If he really was worried about the great sage getting hurt, he wouldn't have said that. Yizichin looked Yang Jian up and down. By now, he was already rubbing his palms in anticipation. All he had to do was wait for Pu Jingwan to nod. That was definitely fake. He looked at Pu Jingwan. If they wanted to suppress the great sage in his current state, she was the only one who could do it. This was the result of their discussion. Unexpectedly, Pu Jingwan retracted her smile. What are you looking at me for? You want me to become like him? Don't even think about it. She had changed her mind. What do you mean by that? Didn't we agree before we came? Said Yizichin. We had a deal before, but now I'm regretting it, said Pu Jingwan. Don't speak. Pu Jingwan reached out and covered Yizichin's mouth. I said I'm not going, so I'm definitely not going. Then you want me to go? Yizichin frowned. If you don't want to go, just let him vent. When he's done, he'll naturally stop. Anyway, don't let me go, don't even think about it. We haven't even talked about the pay increase yet, and now you're ordering me around? Said Pu Jingwan. Can you not be so vulgar? Is this the time to talk about money? I'm your employer. But all I have to do is keep you safe. I'm not your puppet. I have to do whatever you want me to do. If you want me to help you carry on the family line, do I have to take off my clothes and lie on the bed waiting for you to come? Pu Jingwan's domineering words left Yizichin speechless. Yizichin, of course, had no such intentions. All he wanted was for Pu Jingwan and Yang Jian to work together and calm the great sage down. But from what she'd just said, it seemed that was no longer possible. Don't worry too much. Didn't Yang Jian already tell you? After your friend went berserk, his cultivation rose steadily, right? Said Pu Jingwan. Yang Jian nodded in response. Pu Jingwan shrugged. You're right. That's exactly it. When I saw him, I sensed the power inside him. Someone must have intentionally left it inside him, and going berserk might be a way for him to vent it. Right now, he's going berserk because he's digesting the remaining power inside him. Once he's done, he'll naturally calm down. Are you saying you don't want to go? Yizichin pursed his lips. Of course not. What I've said is a reasonable analysis. Besides, if I don't want to go, do you think you can force me to go? Her merciless attack left Yizichin speechless. Han Nan said he'd find him a bodyguard, but she'd obviously just found him an ancestor. He couldn't afford to offend her, couldn't talk to her, and yet she kept asking for more money. Then should we just wait? This time, Yi Zichen decided he might as well ask for her opinion. Pu Jingwan nodded matter-of-factly. They definitely couldn't order this ancestor around. Yi Zichen and Yang Jian glanced at each other, then gave up. Since they couldn't do anything, what was the point of coming here? They might as well let Yang Jian hide and wait until the great sage's berserk ended. That way, they could stay in Heavenly God City and confirm anti-upheaval situation. At the time, he'd assumed that anti-upheaval had been eliminated and the other student societies had advanced, which was why they hadn't attended the celebration banquet. But in truth, he'd only said it in passing to assuage his suspicions. He'd come looking for Yang Jian and the others without any misgivings. At the very least, he needed to see anti-upheaval's members before he could truly relax. Furthermore, he'd sent Shueimo a message, but she hadn't responded yet. This made him a bit worried. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. Since he was already here, worrying about it was pointless. Yi Zichen could only set aside his worries about anti-upheaval. Even if something really had happened to the student society, he'd have to wait until he got back. He sighed helplessly. When Pu Jingwan heard his sigh, she wrinkled her nose proudly. Now that he saw her, Yi Zichen was infuriated. He looked away from Pu Jingwan, who was winking at him, and said to Yang Jian, "Why did the great sage suddenly go berserk? Great sage, why did you suddenly go crazy? Didn't you come to see Zixia Fairy? Did you not see her?" "I think so." Yang Jian hesitated for a moment, then explained what had happened between him and the great sage. He went in on his own. I don't know what happened, but when he came out, he was already like this. Could it be that he was rejected? Yi Zichen furrowed his brows. The way he saw it, it was possible. Fairy Zixia and the great sage had been separated for tens of thousands of years. Too many unknowns could arise in such a long time. Perhaps in the past 10,000 years, their feelings for each other had faded. Even though the great sage still loved Zixia, he was no longer the true love of the past to Zixia. As a result, when the great sage went to see her, he'd been treated like a good guy. This sort of huge psychological difference could easily cause a person to lose control of their emotions. That's why, after the great sage left, he couldn't hold back his anger. He dragged Yang Jian to a desolate, uninhabited place and vented all his pent-up frustrations. That's what Yi Zichen thought, but Yang Jian pursed his lips and shook his head. "I don't think it was as simple as being rejected. You know?" In response to Yi Zichen's astonished exclamation, Yang Jian grinned, shook his head, and snorted. "The way I see it, this monkey was probably cuckolded." Before Yang Jian could finish his sentence, he felt something cold on the left side of his face. He glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw an iron staff pressed against his face, followed by an icy smile. Chapter 1377. Yang Jian was terrified. No one had noticed when the great sage had arrived. By the time they heard his words, he was already standing half a meter away. It was the great sage's Rui Jingu Bang. It slammed into Yang Jian's face and pushed him back a few steps. By now, he didn't seem the least bit as mad as he'd been in the video. His eyes were as clear as water, but his expression was frightening. "You're here too." He cocked his head at Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan and arched his brows, then swung his staff aside. "Who do you think you're trying to scare? Are you trying to scare me or not? Just tell me if I can beat you up or not. If you don't like the beating just now, I don't mind loosening your bones for free." A flash of golden light shot out of the great sage's eyes, and his sleeves fluttered. The Rui Jingu Bang in his hands buzzed and trembled, as if he were ready to attack at the slightest provocation. When he saw this, Yi Zichen's pupils constricted. He didn't care that the great sage and Yang Jian were about to fight. They'd been at loggerheads ever since they were in the heavenly court, and neither of them had a good opinion of the other. He'd long since grown accustomed to bickering like this. What shocked him was the great sage's aura. His aura was unparalleled, as if he were looking down on all of heaven and earth, and the faint undulations of Yao God power emanating from him. Only rulers could release such oppressive pressure. Yi Zichen glanced at Pu Jingwan, who understood what he was thinking. She nodded. He really is a ruler. Even though Yang Jian had said the great sage was already a ruler, that was just his personal judgment. Yi Zichen hadn't seen it for himself. Now, a ruler-level great sage was standing right in front of him. It was hard to imagine how shocked he was. Yi Zichen didn't know what Yang Jian was thinking, but in the face of the great sage's disdainful words, he didn't retaliate. He licked his lips and scratched his head, but Yi Zichen saw the great sage glancing at him. He was scared. From the look on his face, it was obvious Yang Jian was scared. Otherwise, given his personality, there was no way he'd tolerate the great sage talking to him like that. However, this indirectly proved just how strong the great sage was. If their cultivations were similar, Yang Jian would have fought him without a doubt. It seemed that the difference between the two of them was not just a little. Now that he thought about it, the great sage's cultivation truly was terrifyingly high. Yang Jian was now one of the most powerful figures in the three realms. He was strong enough to kill a demon god. Although his cultivation wasn't higher than Shui Yang's, it was close. To be able to make Yang Jian admit defeat without uttering a single word, the great sage was now the realm of the three emperors? Amidst the silence, Yang Jian couldn't help but glance at Yi Zichen. Perhaps seeing that Zhang Xian did not speak for a long time, she became a little anxious and directly used her divine sense to communicate with him. "What are you waiting for? Say something." Yi Zichen couldn't help but laugh at the urgency and nervousness in his voice. It seemed that Yang Jian really was afraid of the great sage beating him with the Rui Jingu Bang. However, the great sage couldn't blame anyone for treating him this way. Just look at how despicable he was when he was drunk. He didn't even think positively about anything. The moment he went up, he suspected that the great sage might have been cuckolded. Who would be able to tolerate that? "Great sage, if you want to beat him up, then beat him up. I won't stop you." Not only did Yi Zichen refuse to put in a good word for Yang Jian, but he even took a step back, as if he didn't want to get involved. Pu Jingwan did the same and stepped aside. She also felt that Yang Jian's mouth was a little too vicious. He indiscriminately accused someone of being cuckolded. She couldn't stand it any longer. "Hey you guys. Wah." When Yang Jian saw Pu Jingwan and Yi Zichen ignore him and step aside, he pointed at them. He looked like he was on the verge of collapse. He couldn't speak for a long time. In the end, all he could do was stare at them, mouth agape, as if he'd accidentally made friends. No one spoke up for him, so Yang Jian cracked his neck and threw caution to the wind. Howling Celestial Dog. The lance suddenly appeared in his hand, and he called out to the howling celestial dog again. It seemed he was ready to fight. To his surprise, the howling celestial dog whimpered and wagged its tail. It lay by Yi Zichen's side and didn't move. It didn't so much as glance in his direction. "You stupid dog, who exactly is your master? I went through untold hardships to help you advance, and now you're F***king abandoning me?" Yang Jian roared at the howling celestial dog, but the dog just lay there, ignoring him. This time, Yang Jian was in a bit of a pickle. The howling celestial dog took up 30% of his strength. In a one-on-one fight, he was absolutely no match for the monkey. "Ha! Now you can see how popular you are." The great sage curled his lips and put away the Rui Jingu Bang. "Look at how pitiful you look. Forget it, I'll let you off the hook." "What do you mean?" Yang Jian panicked. "Are you looking down on me?" "Yeah, I'm looking down on you. So what?" The great sage sneered, shrank the Rui Jingu Bang into his ear, then walked over to Yi Zichen. Yang Jian stomped his feet in anger and yelled about fighting the great sage for 300 rounds. But the great sage said he wouldn't fight him, so he wouldn't. No matter how much Yang Jian yelled, the great sage ignored him and even started chatting with Yi Zichen. Bro, why are you here too? Didn't you say you had business to attend to? I've pretty much taken care of things on my end. Yang Jian sent me a message saying you were in trouble, so I came over to take a look. It's good to see you're fine. What did he say? Asked the great sage. He didn't say much. He just said your emotions weren't too stable and sent me a video call to urge me to come over, said Yi Zichen. You have nothing better to do than send a video call. The great sage glared at Yang Jian. Don't be so heartless. I felt like you were having a mental breakdown and was afraid something would happen to you. That's why I called Zichen over, said Yang Jian, rolling his eyes. I, Lai Sun, have always been very rational. Just now, I only went berserk to stimulate the power master left in my body. There's no need for you to meddle in other people's business. You even called Yi Zichen over, cursed the great sage. Master? Yi Zichen was stunned. Venerable Xuanzang? The great sage shook his head. Yi Zichen understood. That's him. Master Subhuti. The great sage had two masters. One was Golden Cicada, who'd been exiled to the mortal realm to seek scriptures. His mortal name was Venerable Xuanzang, and after returning, he became the Buddha of Sandalwood Merit. As for the other master, he was Master Subhuti. However, after teaching the great sage his ultimate techniques, he left and forbade others from telling them he was his apprentice. You saw Master Subhuti again? The great sage nodded gently. In truth, I didn't really see him. Do you remember when the demons invaded? Master Subhuti saved me and only woke up half a year ago. After that, he said a few words to me, then kicked me out again. Chapter 1378. Brains are good. He had too much character. As he listened to the great sage's simple description, Yi Zichen could imagine what had happened. The great sage had definitely awoken and been shocked to see the patriarch, but the patriarch had calmly waved him off, told him to make good use of the power he'd left in his body, then kicked him out of the sect. There was no need to think too much. That was definitely the case. Yi Zichen couldn't help but smile wryly. Patriarch Subhuti definitely valued the great sage, but his personality. It was hard to say. Yi Zichen looked at the great sage's bitter smile when he said he'd been kicked out, and knew that his guess was most likely correct. The great sage clearly didn't understand his master's actions either. Back then, he'd secretly learned from the patriarch after midnight. After learning, he'd kicked him out of the sect, and he couldn't even say he was his disciple. When the great sage was in trouble, the patriarch had immediately stepped in to help, saving him from the brink of death, and even left him with enough power to break through to the ruler level. Then he'd kicked him out, but he couldn't say he was his disciple. My patriarch, aren't you just giving away your secret? Who doesn't know the great sage is your disciple? Yi Zichen muttered to himself, but he couldn't deny it. The thoughts of major experts were hard to fathom. But this also proved how powerful Patriarch Subhuti was. Just the power he'd left in the great sage's body was enough to help him break through to the ruler level. Furthermore, he'd gone from diviner to this level so quickly. If so, then what level was Patriarch Subhuti at? At the very least, he was stronger than the three emperors. There was always someone stronger than you out there. That wasn't false at all. On the surface, the three emperors might be the strongest in the three realms, but who knew how strong those hidden experts were? They simply didn't want to get involved in worldly affairs, but that didn't mean they were weaker than the three emperors. This isn't going to be easy. Yi Zichen sighed. He was sighing about how to seize celestial fate. Through Xianji, he'd already learned of God Emperor Zhou Wu's enormous faction. The Yao Emperor and Demon Emperor were surely no different. Seizing celestial fate from the three emperors and transcending was already incredibly difficult. Guli was still watching from the shadows, like a tiger watching its prey. There were still so many hidden peerless experts. When the third era faced its final end, these experts would definitely jump out. Right now, Yi Zichen was like a small boat. The surface of the sea seemed calm, but in reality, It was filled with turbulent undercurrents. If he wasn't careful, he'd be swallowed whole, leaving not even his bones behind. For some reason, even with the outside support, Yi Zichen found it difficult to calm down. Just as Yi Zichen was lost in thought, Yang Jian, who'd been silent all this time, suddenly grew anxious. After the great sage had scolded him, Yang Jian pondered for a while. He went berserk in order to stimulate the power in his body. He had always been very rational. In that case, wasn't the injury on his face intentionally caused by the monkey? If he had beaten him up when he was in a frenzy, he would have admitted it. To do it on purpose. King hit me on purpose. The great sage glanced at him and said indifferently, I did it on purpose. What about it? Chi. But he couldn't beat him. If he really wanted to kill, Yang Jian knew that he wouldn't be much weaker than the great sage. But everyone could see the relationship between them. They loved each other and hated each other. Even if they fought, they were just playing around. If they hurt each other, they'd just curse each other and continue fighting. Neither of them would truly hate the other. If he fought the monkey, he definitely wouldn't kill him. But if they fought as if they were just exchanging pointers, he really couldn't beat the monkey. He glared at the monkey for a long time, then sighed. You really are too disappointing. I was worried you'd go berserk and hurt yourself, so I went out of my way to protect you. You took that King broken stick of yours and hit me 7 or 8 times, beating me into this state. If you hadn't been rational at the time, it would have been one thing, but you said you were very rational. I'm so sad. Really, we've been brothers for so many years for nothing. Let's not talk about it anymore. Monkey, I'm really too disappointed. Yang Jian covered his face, looking like he wanted to break off all ties with the great sage. If anyone else saw this, who knew how moved they'd be? The great sage crossed his arms and turned to look at the heartbroken Yang Jian. Keep lying. Yang Jian was speechless. Why did I hit you? Don't you have any idea? Why didn't you think about it? Why didn't the rocks hit you before, but then a rock suddenly hit your face? The great sage said. That stone was a warning to you. You didn't even think about it properly, and you still want to come up and beat me up. Do you think I'd let you off? Did you hear that? Yang Jian, who was heartbroken, suddenly shouted with his eyes wide open. Ha! The great sage simply laughed coldly, then told him to think about it for himself. Then there's nothing wrong with what I said, retorted Yang Jian. You were fine when you left Zisha's place, but now you're acting up and you're hitting me like crazy. I'm starting to wonder if you've been cuckolded. Bang! Before he could finish speaking, the great sage's stick smashed into his face, burying him deep into the ground. Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan watched silently, shaking their heads from time to time. This was no longer just a matter of his cheap mouth. The great sage had clearly expressed his dissatisfaction with his explanation, yet Yang Jian still dared bring it up? Was there something wrong with his head? Your friend's head. Pu Jingwan drew circles on his head. Yi Zichen sighed and shook his head. Forget about him. How did he manage to live so long? Asked Pu Jingwan. He's lucky, I guess, sighed Yi Zichen. This time, the great sage didn't put the Rui Jingu bang away. Instead, he thickened it and held it in the air, pressing Yang Jian firmly into the ground, preventing him from escaping. After a long while, when Yang Jian didn't move, Yi Zichen couldn't bear it anymore. How about you let him out? He doesn't want to die. It's better if he's dead. The great sage glanced at him, then spat on the ground. However, his words caused Yi Zichen's tense heart to relax. He probably wouldn't die. Since Yang Jian's life wasn't in danger, Yi Zichen wasn't too worried. For someone with a brain like that, waking him up in the earth wouldn't be a bad thing. Instead of pleading on Yang Jian's behalf, Yi Zichen said, "What about Zixia?" In truth, he'd been avoiding this topic for fear of touching on the great sage's sore spot and losing control of his emotions. But after thinking it over, he decided he had to ask. For better or worse, He was now working with the outside. With his status as the outside's special envoy, he might even be able to help the great sage out. Inexplicably, the great sage's face contorted in bitterness. He pursed his lips and forced a smile, but his lips were trembling slightly. Next, he sighed and gazed off into the distance. Chapter 1379. One night beneath the tranquil night sky, the great sage's expression was desolate and bitter, illuminated by the moonlight. It was a heart-wrenching sight. He smiled silently as he gazed off into the distance. His fiery passion seemed to have been extinguished by a shower of ice. Up ahead, Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan were affected by his emotions. Yi Zichen had watched the movie Journey to the West, and although he didn't know everything, he knew most of the love and hatred between the great sage and Fairy Zixia. He also knew how deep the great sage's love for her was. Pu Jingwan was different. She'd only met the great sage once. Right now, she was completely affected by the great sage's emotions. His emotions had driven her from her previous disdain towards Yang Jian to her current silence. After thousands of years of waiting, the great sage was finally able to stand before Fairy Zixia once more. After meeting again, all he got was a, "It's all in the past." How cruel! No one said anything else. Even when Yang Jian crawled out from beneath the Rui Jingu Bang, his face covered in dirt, he put his hands on his hips and cursed loudly. However, when they sensed the oppressive atmosphere, they all fell silent. What's going on? Why does the monkey look like that? Yang Jian snuck up to Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan and asked in confusion. He just crawled out of the ground, and his body still smelled of the earth. He glanced at him but said nothing. He scratched his head, then his eyes suddenly lit up. Ha 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 ha, I didn't guess right, did I? That monkey really was. Shut up! Yi Zichen and Pu Jingwan shouted at the same time, but the great sage was even faster. The Rui Jingu Bang descended from the heavens. With a boom, it kicked up countless rocks and gusts of wind. Yang Jian, who just crawled out of the ground, returned to his old home. Really? How on earth did he manage to live this long? I wanted to beat him up just now. Pu Jingwan clenched her fists in anger. Even at a time like this, he was still making fun of the great sage? He was too heartless. After spending so much time with him, she'd gained some understanding of Yang Jian. His taunting skills had definitely reached the maximum level. It was just that he wasn't smart enough. He didn't know when to mock and when to shut his mouth. This kind of person should be silenced or made a mute so that he wouldn't come out and harm people. In the face of Pu Jingwan's fury, Yi Zichen glanced at her, but said nothing. If one were to say that Yang Jian had gone overboard, he had always been like that. His words were filled with ridicule, but he never considered whether the situation was appropriate or not. This could only be attributed to his personality. Yi Zichen, who'd known him for so long, didn't criticize him. He believed that the great sage was well aware of his personality, which was why he only used the Rui Jingu Bang to suppress him and did not fly into a rage. He knew that Yang Jian's words were unintentional, but it was like a sharp blade that gently scratched his heart. Yi Zichen walked up to the great sage and took out 2 bottles of divine brew. Want some? The great sage grabbed the godly brew, then tilted his head back and poured the entire bottle into his mouth, not leaving a single drop behind. He didn't ask for more, and Yi Zichen didn't give it to him. Yi Zichen drank to help him relax, not to make him drink himself into a drunken stupor. What do you think after that? Yi Zichen took a sip and laughed. The great sage rested his hands on the back of his head and leaned against the ancient tree he'd broken earlier. He looked up at the dazzling starry sky. What else could I think? Just live on. His relaxed tone made Yi Zichen's heart ache. He understood exactly how the great sage was feeling right now. They'd loved each other for so long, yet they'd broken up just like that. Anyone else would be able to do it without the slightest bit of hesitation. The mess in front of him was the best explanation. The great sage cared very much. Then live on. Yi Zichen patted the great sage on the shoulder, then swallowed his words. Saying anything more now was pointless. All he needed was the great sage's self-control. Day and night alternated. When day replaced night and brought dawn to the world, Yi Zichen and the others remained in the Yao realm. Halfway through, Yang Jian took advantage of the great sage's lapse to slip out from beneath the Rui Jingu Bang. This time, he'd learned his lesson. He didn't mention a single word about the possibility of being cuckolded. Instead, he picked up little Bern and played with the dog. Staying here was the great sage's idea. He said he wanted to use this method to stay with Zixia for a while longer. After that, he might not disturb her life for the rest of his life. Instead, he would silently wish her happiness. Pu Jingwan revealed her rare emotional side. She covered her face and turned away, her shoulders trembling. Perhaps she'd cried, or perhaps she hadn't. No one knew what happened when she turned away, but they all knew that it had been a difficult night. How fast! It's already morning. The great sage had been staring up at the sky all night. He spoke in a hoarse voice, then cracked his neck and slapped the ground. He instantly shot to his feet and summoned the Rui Jingu Bang. He spun it around a few times, then slammed it back into the ground. Let's go. This call brought Yi Zichen, Pu Jingwan, and Yang Jian back to their senses. When they arrived in front of him, they heard the great sage laugh heartily. What are you doing? Don't worry too much about me. What's in the past is in the past. Let's hurry back to the God realm. Doesn't Yi Zi have a lot of important business to take care of? Let's not waste any more time. Do you have any idea who it was that delayed us? Asked Yang Jian, who'd been ignored all night. Pu Jingwan glared at him, and Yi Zichen couldn't help but facepalm. Even the howling celestial dog slapped its ears in exasperation. In response, the great sage was even more direct. As soon as Yang Jian said this, he felt his head go dark. He looked up and saw the great sage's Rui Jingu Bang towering into the sky. Yang Jian's expression instantly froze. Monkey bro, don't mess around. Heh heh heh. Yang Jian laughed sheepishly. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. Hurry up and put away your divine abilities. He smelled like dirt, and if he tasted it carefully in his mouth, there were even bits of mud in it. After eating half a night's worth of dirt, Yang Jian didn't want to eat any more. The great sage snorted, then put the Rui Jingu Bang back into his ear. Yang Jian, frightened, stood obediently to the side and giggled foolishly. Yi Zichen didn't hesitate any longer. He nodded. The way he saw it, it really was best to leave as soon as possible. Leave this place of grief for the great sage. At that moment, Yi Zichen's transmission slip glowed. He took it out and sent his divine sense into it. Xian Ji's transmission appeared in his sea of consciousness. Chapter 1380. Chapter 1380. Xian Ji's land. The Lightning Emperor's estate on the central divine mountain Xiaoting's return to power caused quite a stir in the God realm. It was just like how he'd abdicated all those years ago and passed the throne to Xiao Yan. His return was just as abrupt. Quite a few clans had heard rumors that Xiao Yan, who'd once been the Lightning Emperor, had been erased from the family records after Xiao Ting took the throne. He'd been expelled from the Xiao family, and his trusted aides had been expelled as well. This was no small change. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the Xiao family had changed dynasties. However, the outside world hadn't heard anything about such a massive change. Only when the Xiao family announced it publicly did they learn that Xiao Ting was back in charge. However, to the other clans, whether Xiao Yan or Xiao Ting was in charge made no difference. Some clans came to congratulate Xiao Ting upon his ascension, while others continued their business as usual. They weren't affected in the slightest. The Xiao family's ancestral mansion. This mansion was the birthplace of the Xiao family's ancestors. When the first Lightning Emperor was born, it became a forbidden area. Only the head of the family, the Lightning Emperor, could live here. Xiao Ting, who just returned to his position, landed there. He sat cross-legged on a boulder, his eyes closed. Lightning crackled behind him, like dragons and serpents. It was a deep purple, and the air around him cracked. In front of him stood a stooped old man with snow-white hair. His face was covered in wrinkles. This old man had lived even longer than Xiao Ting. In the Lightning Emperor's estate, even Xiao Ting had to address him as Uncle. He'd been the previous Lightning Emperor's errand boy, loyal and devoted to the Lightning Emperor. However, when the previous Lightning Emperor perished, he no longer cared about the clan's affairs. Instead, he found a secluded place to enjoy his remaining years. No one would have guessed that Xiao Ting would find this old errand boy and put him to use. Why does it seem so noisy outside? Xiao Ting slowly withdrew the lightning into his body. When he opened his eyes, lightning flashed. Then, he spoke calmly. Xianji has sent her divine generals to demolish buildings and build new ones, said Uncle. What do you mean? Xiao Ting furrowed his brows. Xianji bought the land across from the Lightning Emperor's residence. Right now, she's tearing down the former residences and building new ones. You're saying Xianji bought the land across from our Lightning Emperor's estate? Xiao Ting was stunned. Yes. Perhaps Uncle really was in his twilight years. When he spoke, his voice was weak. The young men in the clan told this old man that Xianji bought all the land across from our manor. It's not a small area either. She bought the Liu and Sun family estates as well? It wasn't just the Liu and Sun families. The Wu family and Skyspan Trading Company's branches were bought as well. The Wu clan's divine estate. When the God Emperor had just ascended to the throne, the East Monarch Tai had personally gifted the statue to him. Being situated near the statue of a deity could increase a cultivator's comprehension of the Tao of heaven and earth. It was a rare divine artifact. Tian Xianji Divine Estate, Emperor had Emperor's Tian Divine Wu Dynasty statue, was, and Ji's XS King's Qin had, Feng Ji's Long Ji's Divine Ji's Qin Ji long ago. However, because the statue was personally gifted by the Demon Emperor, it had an extraordinary significance. The God Emperor naturally couldn't give it to the Xiao family. If he did, it would be no different from giving it to the Xiao family. It would hurt the Demon Emperor's reputation. Therefore, he placed it outside the Xiao family's territory. The left half of the statue was occupied by the Xiao family, while the right half of the land was occupied by the rising prices. Countless families wanted to set up their bases here. Of course, those that actually came were not the top families. The great clans all had their own inheritances, so they wouldn't easily change their positions. Even if one's comprehension of the heaven and earth's Tao and Dharma would increase by a little with the blessing of the deity statue, which seemed very coveted, only those clans that didn't have a particularly long history would dare to do it. In the end, the right half was split between the three most powerful clans in Heavenly God City at the time, the Liu, Sun, and Wu clans, as well as the Skyspan Trading Company. The larger clans weren't interested in the rest of the smaller territories, so a few wealthy merchants or even smaller clans scooped them up. In the past 10,000 years, there had not been any change in the families here. Now, he suddenly heard that Xianji had bought all the land on the right. Back then, those families had fought tooth and nail for this land. She definitely didn't want to sell it. Xianji had definitely paid a hefty price to buy it from them. Why is she buying this land? Isn't Xianji's manor already in a good position? Does she want to bring her clansmen back from the Nine-Tailed Fox clan? Xiao Ting frowned. I don't know, said Uncle, and Xiao Ting rubbed his chin, his hands trembling. He hurriedly pulled out something that looked like a cigarette, stuffed it into his mouth, and lit it. After taking a few deep breaths, his trembling hands finally stabilized. Afterwards, he let out a few more relaxed sighs. Only then did he calm down and think about Xianji's actions. Any family would drool over a piece of land surrounded by a statue. To put it bluntly, it wouldn't be a problem to establish a 10,000-year foundation here. He was sure the Liu, Sun, and Wu families were thinking the same thing. Otherwise, they wouldn't have burned their boats and cauldrons all those years ago. If Xianji wanted to buy land from them, she had to offer a price that would move them. Her price had to be so high that it far surpassed the value of the land. Only then would they be willing to sell it to her. Then there was the Skyspan Trading Company. The Northern Divine Mountains Sea of Innocence's Shui family was the richest family in the 9 Divine Mountains. Whether it was money or resources, they definitely didn't lack it. If Xianji wanted to buy the land from them, the only possibility was that she owed them a favor. Moreover, this favor would have to be quite large. Otherwise, given that Xianji and the Skyspan Trading Company didn't have a deep relationship, there was no way they would sell the land. Finally, they had to figure out Xianji's motive for buying the land. It was true that Xianji was a member of the Yaofox clan, but people at their level knew that her relationship with her clan wasn't particularly harmonious. They rarely interacted with each other. She'd only sent her clansmen to the 9-tailed fox clan because they were from the same clan. Furthermore, Xianji had a good relationship with Su Wan and Su Qinyan, which was why she'd asked them to take care of them. Given her relationship with her clan, it was unlikely that she'd pay such a large price to bring them back. He'd even purposely placed it across from the Lightning Emperor's estate. Everyone knew that he hated Yao the most. If she brought her clansmen over and placed them across from the Lightning Emperor's manor, was she trying to piss him off? After mulling it over, even someone as shrewd as Xiao Ting couldn't figure out what Xianji's goal was. At the same time, he finished smoking his cigarette. Then he furrowed his brows. Chapter 1381. Decision made after doubt. It didn't take long for them to travel from the transfer formation to Heavenly God City. Yi Zichen and the others found a nearby town and returned to Heavenly God City in less than an hour. I'm going to my aunt's place. Do you want to come with me? As soon as Yi Zichen left the spatial tunnel, he asked the others. However, there was no point in asking. Pu Jingwan and Yang Jian's mission was to protect him. If they went to Skyspan City, the great sage might even be able to find Wei Jie and the others. But they were in Heavenly God City, and he didn't know anyone here. All he could do was tag along. The others nodded and followed Yi Zichen to the location Xianji had given them. Perhaps because they were in too much of a hurry, they didn't notice the hat-wearing peddler in front of the transfer formation. When he saw Yi Zichen and the others walk out, he immediately put his hat back on, completely covering his face. From start to finish, the peddler paid close attention to their every move. Only after they left did he take out a jade slip and send a message to someone else. The tavern. After renting out the entire tavern leading to the Divine Martial Academy, the heads of Skyspan Academy's student societies took turns waiting inside. They did this to delay Yi Zichen's discovery of Shui Mo's condition as much as possible, or perhaps they didn't want him to find out at all. Murong Shui and Jiang Yong were currently seated in the tavern. Jiang Yong sat at the entrance, his divine sense completely spread out, covering the entire tavern. So long as Yi Zichen appeared, he'd know right away and take action. It didn't matter if they used lies or other methods, as long as they didn't let Yi Zichen enter the Divine Martial Academy and learn of Shui Mo's condition, they'd be fine. This was the result of their joint discussion, and they'd even obtained the Shui family's support. Murong Shui sat in the center of the tavern, the jade slip in her hand glowing with light. Ever since Shui Mo's accident, Murong Shui had been trying to understand her situation through Shui Bebe. Before long, the jade slip's light faded. Murong Shui put the jade slip away, and Jiang Yong spoke up. How is Shui Mo? Has she woken up yet? Murong Shui silently shook her head, her eyes brimming with undisguisable grief and self-blame. Even now, she still believed it was her fault that Shui Mo had become like that. When he saw Murong Shui's gaunt, pale face and soulless eyes, Jiang Yong's heart ached. Ever since Shui Mo was sent to the Sea of Innocence, He hadn't seen Morong Shui smile. She was no longer as awe-inspiring as she used to be. She didn't care about anything and was immersed in self-blame all day long. She put all her heart and soul into the jade slip. As long as there was news in the jade slip, she would immediately investigate the inside news. He didn't want to drink tea, eat, or sleep at night. He became thinner and thinner. Jiang Yong loved her very much, and seeing her like this pained him greatly. He wanted to comfort her, but no matter what he said, Morong Shui's expression wouldn't improve. In the end, he understood that all he could do was silently accompany her. That was all. Jiang Yong let out a long sigh, then looked at Morong Shui with concern in his eyes. Afterwards, he focused all of his attention on the street. Ever since Shui Mo's incident, he'd been having this conversation with Morong Shui a few times a day. Bebe said. Morong Shui, who'd been silent for a long time, suddenly spoke up. Jiang Yong immediately turned to look at her. What did she say? In truth, he didn't really care what Shui Bebe said. Of course he cared about Shui Mo's safety. After all, they were good friends. But comparatively, he cared more about Morong Shui. Jiang Yong hadn't said anything just now because he wanted to talk to her. Who cared what Shui Bebe said? As long as Morong Shui said a few words, that was enough. She said she saw Shui Mo's transmission slip. There were quite a few messages Zichen sent her. Based on the order of the messages, it seems Zichen suspects something's up with Shui Mo or anti-upheaval. Bebe told me that we absolutely can't let Zichen know about this. She'll help us deceive him. Great Emperor Shuiyang is behind this as well. Jiang Yong was certain that this was the longest Morong Shui had spoken in a long time. However, to his indifference, Yi Zichen's message wasn't particularly friendly. However, Jiang Yong didn't find this strange at all. The way he saw it, Yi Zichen was a shrewd person. Yi Zichen's ability to read people's emotions was far superior to his own. They'd done it in the tavern the night before, and at the time, he'd thought there was nothing wrong with it. But when he thought about it more closely, there were far too many suspicious points. If Yi Zichen didn't suspect anything, it would be strange. What should we do? Morong Shui was practically on the verge of tears. She was certain that the unconscious Shui Mo didn't want Yi Zichen to know about this. In order to make up for this mistake, she had to make sure Yi Zichen never found out. At the very least, not until Shui Mo woke up. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Jiang Yong walked up to Morong Shui and gently patted her on the shoulder. At that moment, the jade slip in Jiang Yong's pocket lit up. He scanned it with his divine sense, then furrowed his brows. He'd just learned that Yi Zichen had returned to Heavenly God City. How could he have returned so quickly? He'd gotten the news from one of his team members. In truth, the peddler who'd been waiting outside the spatial tunnel was a member of the Aspirations Society. Jiang Yong furrowed his brows. They'd gone to the Yao realm just last night. Why were they back the next morning? Next, he recalled the spatial tunnel the Yao had constructed in Heavenly God City. He absolutely couldn't panic. He was Morong Shui's pillar of support right now. He had to think of a way to get out of this mess. Since Yi Zichen already suspected them, it would be even more difficult to deceive him later on. They had to find a point where Yi Zichen could absolutely trust them, then divert his suspicions so that he wouldn't think about it. Morong Shui, Jiang Yong, Pang Zheng, and the others didn't even need to think about it. Yi Zichen had sent Shui Mo multiple messages, so he naturally suspected them. Jiang Wei. Jiang Yong suddenly slapped his thigh. He didn't know if this Jiang Wei was good with words or if he disdained to associate with them, but he hadn't come to the tavern last night. Perhaps he didn't think it was beneath him to join them in deceiving Yi Zichen. But now that things had come to this, so long as they explained the stakes, he should be able to help them.